fight to break their spine and reclaim what once was mine. Those cravens backstabbed me, deceived me. Never shall I tolerate their crimes again. Now let the...
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to tonight's broadcast of the Aegis Champions League. We're coming at you on Black Friday. We're a little bit out of our regular schedule, but we saw two hype teams move their match to today, and the broadcast team, turns out we can all get together and cover it, so we are going to do exactly that. We've got Mirage Alliance taking on Cincinnati Fear in an elimination match between two NACL teams.
Exactly. It's the advantage of two people not actually celebrating the Thanksgiving and anything like that. So it's easier to try and coordinate to sort of date for all of us. And having these two teams for tonight's matchup was something we couldn't pass at all. It's a matchup we're going to see next split, and it's a matchup that we're going to enjoy so much in this current ACL split with two teams that, in all honesty, it feels kind of weird seeing them at the lower bracket at this point. And it also means that one of them is going to be completely out of the competition after tonight, which it sounds mental when you think about it. Not even BO5s were able to reach.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, it's crazy, but that's the result of having so many stacked up teams in this league, right? The top four are all incredibly competitive, and we're getting very close to the top 8 territory. This is going to be the final match that decides who is the 8th team making it into top 8. We know who the other 7 are. Let's check out the rosters here, TDS. Mirage Alliance, we saw this team this time last week. It's Alorum, Chad, Sudsy, Neo, and Dardoch.
Yeah, it's a roster we know quite a lot about. We've seen them play consistently, and they are the current defending champions, so we know the potential that they are able to have in the ACL. It's obviously going to be a bit difficult going against a roster that does have name value and rival the Mirage Alliance roster, but at the same time I feel like they've been ramping up. They were close to getting eliminated, but they've been able to try and come back from difficult situations and turn around a lot of games, and importantly, they get more time to keep on ramping up, and they are ramping up at the right moment in the split.
Completely agree with you there, as they have really started to find their footing, especially after going down 0-1 in that series last week up against CCG Futures. They were very nearly going to get 2-0'd and get sent right out, but they seem to have rallied and looked much better since then. Alorum talked about breaking out of that funk a little bit, and now I'm very excited to see them up against this Cincinnati Fear roster. This is going to be Toasty Alex, Perry, Shochi Manui, and Azizi Legendary from top to bottom. So that center core of 3 from the Cincinnati Fear NACL roster with their top 4 run just this last split. And then got Toasty Alex off rolling in the top lane and ZZ Legendary off coaching in the bot lane.
And that's the name value we're talking about, the 3-man core from Fear that has been quite successful in the NACL. Hopefully we are able to see them eventually go even higher than just the NACL, but so far they've been really consistent and really good. It's more so on the 2 remaining pieces where we begin to have a bit of doubts here and there. Toasty being lane, or having to lane swap into the top lane, maybe not having the biggest of experiences, even though he had a great showcase recently in his normal position, which is the mid lane. Top lane hasn't been the best of places for him so far, and maybe he can finally try and turn around, but it's a bit difficult to really look into that, especially going against someone like Alorum. And then on the bot lane, ZZ Legendary may not be facing one of the best supports. Not saying Dardoch isn't really good, but it's still Dardoch difficult because Neo and Dardoch got really good.
Yeah, completely agree there. Lots of really good stuff between Neo and Dardoch. It's a little bit of a mismatch, it feels like, for Cincinnati Fear, at least in my perspective. I think it's going to be really tough for them in the top and bot lanes. Neo and Dardoch are such a skilled bot lane duo. ZZ Legendary, not really looking to make his way in this scene as a player, at least historically. He's been coaching for Dignitas Challengers pretty recently, and that team was able to actually find a lot of success. But as a player, they haven't quite seen that translated quite yet. And then Toasty up at the top lane, he's playing mid lane in scouting combines and stuff right now, like in the middle of the season, playing mid lane in solo queue. He's playing mid lane in scouting combines. This guy's a mid laner. He is looking for competitive opportunities in the mid lane. he's just rocking down here with his boys, to play some ACL and try to be on a very competitive team that can challenge for the whole thing. And sometimes that means playing off role. And I think that does mean, right, that he's not on the caliber of a Lorem. Not to hate on Toasty as a player, but it's not a top lane player. And this isn't support, man. This isn't support, buddy. You can't just swap on over there and dominate it right off the bat.
Especially since the current meta is not really good enough with tanks as of now. There's tanks that you can play, but essentially if you don't play the carry top laners, you're going to be at a big disadvantage in a lot of those points. So probably going to be impacting Toasty quite a bit. That being said, and just a side note, hope that teams are watching Toasty on the combines and he eventually gets into the NCL because he's really, really good. But for this particular matchup, being overall maybe one of the differences in one of the places where Mirage can really try and take advantage of, and that's what we need to see out of Fear. That being said, we cannot take away from the three members, the three-man core that has carried Fear in a lot of the tough situations over in the NACL with Perry, Shochi, and Minui. Three players that we know are capable of trying to put the teams on their backs, and if they are able to get the opportunity, they can 100% do it. Particularly for me, and I bring this up essentially everywhere I go, every place I can put it out. I'm a big Shochi fan, and I think he not only has the playstyle potential and the mechanics to try and pull it off, but also the champ pool. Like, his champ pool is really, really big, so he can bring a surprise that nobody's expecting and carry the team through that alone.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same category. I'm a big Shochi fan as well, but I'm also a big Perry fan. I think that jungle mid duo for this team has been what's made them so competitive over their first couple of splits in the NACL. And I think even prior, Perry's career kind of speaks for itself, right? He came in, if people remember, there was that one split where Dignitas had River and they traded him away and brought up XU, and that left an opening in their academy slots. They filled that with an 18-year-old Perry who was just brand new to the scene, or at least pretty close to it. It was his first foray into tier 2, and he took that team all the way to a finals run. Like, they were incredibly good, even with a very inexperienced jungler at the helm. He was jungling for Insanity at that time, and that whole roster, I think, clicked incredibly nicely. And that was I think where a lot of people first got exposed to Perry, and I think he's just kept up that level of excellence since then. He was a player that people are saying we're floating around as a name for LCS this last season. Does not appear to have worked out that way, but I think is one of the top tier players in tier 2, and is definitely a jungler that's going to be a really cool matchup to watch up against Chad today, as I think both of them are very talented tier 2 level junglers.
Exactly. Talking about the jungle, right? We had a lot of difficulty trying to find like the strongest jungler when looking at the All-Star, because I feel like this split there was quite a lot of good competition for the spots in All-Star. And these two junglers jump immediately to mind when thinking about All-Star junglers in the ACL. It's Chad and Barry, two really capable junglers, or capable of carrying the team kind of junglers, but they also play smartly around their lanes. They understand the power points that they can try and give to the team, and if they play according to that idea, they can really shine for the team in general, which I think it's going to be a fun scenario. Like, there's champions where these two kind of collide, but they're also able to try and play different styles. Particularly Chad, for example, can play the hyper carry mages in the jungle like the Karthus. We've seen it sometimes, and there Perry can go for a bit more of the hyper early game, hyper acceleration kind of junglers like the Listen. So it's going to be interesting seeing what they try to approach, both of them going into the series, and what kind of expectations we can set from the series towards the NACL later on, or in the next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Perry just has completely been killing it lately in playing a whole bunch of different junglers, right? He has been rocking pretty much everything under the sun that you can think of. It's been a lot of that Sejuani and that Maokai, a couple of games each, but he's got a Jax jungle game in there. He's got a Karthus game, and a Mumu game, anything you could think of. Udyr's in there, Bel'Veth's in there, Poppy's in there, Trundle's in there. He's played every single champion you could think of in this past split, and now is going to be looking to carry that big, broad jungle pool into the game here today.
And already with the bans starting out, they actually went in for the jungler, so the high matchup does certainly deliver with the bans at the very least, with Graves and Jarvan both taken away. Now Maokai added onto that pool, and I can see this Sejuani also being one of the champions banned away, although does leave open quite a few of the stronger ones, like the Orianna, like the Rel, champions that we know players value a lot and are willing to play. Saya and Rakan as well, both available, so it's going to be interesting seeing what both of these teams try try to opt into when the bans finally end, and it's going to be the 6. Well, Fear is one of those teams that play a lot of the 6, and they played it flexed around, which is really, really great to see. So having to force that ban out, it's going to be the Senna first pick, and starting off with one of the many, feels like, strong champions in the current meta, but they are leaving open the Orianna and Sion Rakan as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Senna going to be the first pick here for Cincy Fear, and Mirage Alliance going to take that Orianna and Rel together for that really powerful team fight engage combo. Mirage already looking to go for a little bit more of a scaly style. I liked this a lot more from them last week. They started off the series against CCG Futures with an Akali for Sudsy, and felt like they weren't quite able to play around that the way they wanted to. They swapped over to Azir later on in the series, and I think found a lot more success. I want to see more of Sudsy on these control mages.
No. And the Seraphine, we know that Fear do like to play the Seraphine. Minui is one of the players that not only can play the mages down during the bot lane, but likes to go for the Seraphine because of the amount of value that it provides for the team. And the double healing from this too may end up being super big in team fights. I hope they go for the Wukong, because I feel like the Wukong mixes better with the idea of the composition from Fear, and this already is setting up for a really good mid to late game, particularly late game team fighting composition from Fear that doesn't shy away from fights because they have way too much sustain with the Senna and the Seraphine. As for the side of Mirage, I do like the Orianna and the Rel. I'm not against it, but they need to find more ways to try and burst out champions quickly, because they are lacking that sort of immediate burst potential if they are only relying on the Orianna. Renekton is not a bad choice, but I'm thinking maybe something else that can really just burst people out immediately.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of that Wukong as well. As we'll get my camera fixed up here in a second. But the Wukong in the jungle for Fear, I think, going to really help them out. I wouldn't even discount this as a potential bot lane pairing with the Senna. That's something that we've seen teams go for before. But I do think the Seraphine is a classic Minui pick. And then Mirage taking that Renekton, going to look for some power in the top lane, and they can ban to defend that now for Alora.
And they are looking for now, trying to maybe attack the mid lane pool onto Shochi, not believing that this Seraphine would go into the mid lane, which I agree, like, it feels like such a Minui pick. Not saying that it's because he plays it a lot, but he is one of the players willing to go into that mages in the bot lane like we were mentioning before, and we've seen so many times in the NCL. So it makes sense that they believe this to be the case as we see the remaining bans. I would expect maybe a Rakan ban to come through from Fear as well, just to try and take away from the whole team fighting value that Mirage Alliance may try and set up. But apart from that, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of important champions that Mirage needs to try and go for that Fear would be really scared of banning away, especially with the first 3 picks that they went for. Smart Silas, because it can really be good with the Rel and the Renekton and the Orianna ultimate. And apart from that, it's now seeing what the last remaining champions they can really look for.
That is what it's going to be all about here, as we still are looking for a marksman to come on through. The Jinx has been banned away up against Neo. What are they going to pick for him? Likely going alongside this Rel, that you got to remember the Rel can also be flexed into jungle. So they are going to try to keep that flex alive here. Doesn't feel like too much of a Chad champion, but I think keeping their flexibility alive in this draft is something that they definitely want to do. Yeah. And Chad is a flexible enough player that he can go for stuff like the Rel, and has in fact done so already this season. Already drawing the Graves ban, of course, as well as that Maokai. Now let's see what Fear want to round out their draft with. Shochi does have that champion Ocean. He will play anything under the sun, but up against the Orianna, there are plenty of valuable options. The Jax lock-in going to be for Toasty in that top lane. And then question is, what do they want to take here for rounding out in a mid lane?
So I like the Syndra idea because of the pushback. Victor is another option if you want to have more control damage. Yone would be really interesting for the setup, but he would be pressure against Orianna. I could see maybe something like the Tristana being the other option for having a secondary AD carry. But if you want more damage, I like the Syndra. Like, honestly, the pushback for the Rel and the Renekton are really, really good. And thinking about the potential remaining bot laners, if it's not going to be something like the Milio maybe, or the Lulu, if it ends up being a Leona, it adds even more value onto it. The Bard, we've seen both sides of the coin with this champion. It can be perfect to set up fights, or completely troll and destroy everything that your team is aiming to do. So it's going to be an interesting approach. And honestly, Dardoch, I honestly don't associate Dardoch with Bard, but it's going to be fun seeing what he's going to bring out with the Bard.
And Dardoch's just become a Bard one trick in the last like 2 weeks. I don't know what to say. Coming into playoffs, right? Our notes, our little narrative pieces about Dardoch, where this guy plays everything, right? Coming into playoffs, coming into his first streamed match, he had only played champions once. He had a new champion every single game. It was like a run back of his last stint in LCS in the jungle. Where he played a bunch of different champions.
Until he repeated Alistar.
I know. And then he repeated Alistar, and he repeated a couple of champs. But then even coming into last week, it was like he's never played a champion more than twice. He's got a couple of champs that he's played 2 times, but the rest of them have only been played once. Now I think Bard's at like 4. He's just been playing Bard every single chance he gets. Not really a staple of the meta, but maybe a little inspired by Carria's performances up against NA. Maybe just a big fan of the roaming power that pick brings. I think it suits him really well as a converted jungler. But yeah, I don't know. Either way, the Aphelios Bard will be the bot lane for Mirage, and they love this Bard pick, and it seems like as long as you keep letting Dardoch have it, he's going to keep taking it.
Well, let's hope for Mirage Alliance fans that he's inspired by Carria and not Crisp. Because after the finals, you probably don't want to have that sort of Bard performance on your team. That being said, I do think that the Bard here can work out, especially when looking at the engages from the Wukong. Because that's the scariest part for both Aphelios and the Orianna. Those are the 2 challenges you have to be extremely worried about for the engages. But after that, the Bard is really good to try and set up engages. The ganks into the bot lane can be really risky for the Zen and the Seraphine if the Bard is able to set up portals. And then also dragon control and control of objectives can be really, really good from him because his double stun can just set up for the follow-up play for the Rel on the Renekton. I can see this Bard really shining through and being able to command a lot of the early stages of the game with the Rel as his duo partner. That being said, it can also just mess up everything for the team, and if the team ends up losing out on a lot of the control over the map, he is just going to get picked up in multiple spaces because he's not going to be able to collect chimes nor move as aggressively as he probably desires to.
Yeah, and we would be remiss. It was so early in the draft, we didn't get to talk about it too much, but this draft for Cincinnati Fear has so many pieces that are core to the Cincinnati roster and their identity, right? I mean, the Seraphine for Manui is almost a meme at this point. It was so permabanned against him, even when it wasn't particularly in the meta. He's a incredibly adept player at playing, I think, Mage's bot lane in general, but the Seraphine in particular, I think he is very, very dangerous on, and very few teams have let him have at even tier 2 levels of play. And then I also recall the Wukong as being in that same category. I think Perry is a fantastic Wukong player. It was a huge weapon in his arsenal during the Cincinnati Fear run in spring, kind of rotated out of the meta in summer, and he went back to those kind of Sejuanis and Maokais of the world the same way that everybody else did. But now that it's starting to make reappearances, I think this is one of the best players to see it on, and I think he goes really, really well with the duos, with the Senna, with the Seraphine, with the Syndra. I think all of these drafts really do a fantastic job of setting up for Perry's Wukong, and I think that's going to be a big pick to keep your eye on as Cincinnati Fear looks to navigate this early game.
I also do like the fact that Fear with this draft kind of set it up really well to provide protection for Toasty up there in the top lane. Like, this composition doesn't require a lot of attention down there in the bot lane, because as long as they don't get consistently dive, which I will admit, it's a fear, especially after level 6 with the Bard ultimate, but before that, it's going to be actually quite difficult to try and get a dive against the Sand, against the Seraphine, huge amount of shields, huge amount of healings, so it's really difficult to try and make everything work out to try and put a lot of pressure onto them. Whereas, if you try and do that against the top lane, that can be a bit more achievable, and I think that this composition sets up really well to protect Toasty until he's strong enough by himself that you don't need to provide protection, and then the rest of the team moves in as a 4-man unit capable of fighting effectively by themselves. I think that this is a really nice setup that they are finding for each other and can kind of cover for the weaknesses that we were expecting maybe coming into the series to be really apparent. So I like the idea that they are trying to not only face what Emma is bringing into them, but also trying to cover as much as possible their weaknesses and not allow a lot of cracks in the armor.
Yeah, definitely going to really come down to how I think this early game plays out. I feel like we say that a lot of these games, but I think it's definitely true here as Mirage, they've got this power in the top lane that's eventually going to drop on off once this Jax gets scaling. I think the Syndra and Orianna are pretty much a wash, especially once we start getting into the mid-late game stages. They do different stuff, but I think they do it equally well. And now looking towards that bot lane, right? How much scaling is going to be enabled for this Aphelios? How powerful is the team fighting going to be around the Seraphine and Wukong combo? I think that's really what's going to end up making a huge amount of a difference for Cincinnati Fear coming into this mid game. They certainly would like to be stacking dragons here. They've got the more powerful skirmish heavy jungler, and they should have a lot of push in this bottom lane through two powerful early game champions in the Seraphine and the Senna. Going to be quite the scaling duo as well, but in the first couple of levels, you know that Aphelios is not going to be able to pull his weight the same way that something like a Seraphine can. Going to really come down to, it's a 4-range bot lane, so definitely expect a lot of trading, a lot of fight over pushing the wave, and whoever ends up winning out on that, I think is going to have a huge advantage.
Yeah, I also want to see how much attention do the junglers put into this, because as I was setting up, I think Fear probably wants to go towards the top side a bit more, since Toasty has been or can be a bit more of the weakness for the team comparatively to the rest. But it also could be a case where MA just lets it be an island, which we've seen a lot of times, by the way. Like, there's been games where we think top lane will have more focus, and then it completely dies by them, two of them fighting consistently by themselves and nobody even paying attention to top lane. And if that happens, how much does MA need to do to just make bot lane completely irrelevant and try and ramp up these Aphelios? Which, that is kind of the counter for whatever Fear wants to do. If Aphelios is way too strong towards the mid and late game, then is it possible to try and stop him from just carrying the game completely? Like, it doesn't matter how much you last in a team fight. If Aphelios is able to outlast you, he will deal more damage than you. That's just the reality of it, because he will have more damage at the end, at the later parts of the game. So if that's the case, how much will MA find to enable these Aphelios? How much will they look for to enable these Aphelios? That's kind of the questions looking at bot lane. And if they are able to achieve it, is that just going to be impossible for Fear to try and go over? I like Fear's composition, don't get me wrong, but I do think that MA has a comp that does work well for hyper carries later on, like the Aphelios and the Orianna, and it does also work out for their strength as a team, something that we've seen in the ACL and also in the Yokus towards the NACL.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you there, TDS. So it's all going to come down to who's going to end up coming out ahead in this game number 1, and paying attention to how that's going to affect the rest of the series. I do want to give a quick shout out before we start to Coachify. Coachify is a commission-free esports coaching platform currently in open beta. You can become a coach today, track your students, and inspire them to succeed while turning your passion into a career. Click the panel located below the stream in the description to check out their website for more information. Thank you again to Coachify for sponsoring the ACL for its grandest split yet, as we are getting geared up to get into game number 1 elimination matchup, best of 3 between Cincinnati Fear and Mirage Alliance. We'll find out who is going to be moving on tonight, starting off with this game number 1 right now.
And I'm expecting maybe a bit of level 1 coming in from MA, since they do have early champions that can actually set it up, but it's not that typical to see it consistently. One of the teams that I love from the ACL that does this, it's Cloud. They've been one of the teams that are more aggressive into this sort of things, but it doesn't feel like either of these teams do want to try and go for some early shenanigans.
Definitely. So far, pretty basic spread out to kick things off in game number 1. Doesn't look like either team wants to go for any kinds of risky invades. Dardoch already starting to walk around and look to snag himself a chime here or there, wherever he sees them spawning. Does influence where your upcoming chimes spawn, where you're actually at on the map in the early game. So expect to see him mostly hovering around the bottom side, but not too much to fight for one way or the other for either of these squads. Both junglers just want to get their first clears off. They want to hit that level 3 mark, and really both are gunning for that level 6. I think that's really where you get the full ganking power on both the Rel and the Wukong.
Satsi won. He won the trade. He didn't get hit by anything, and now Shochi's going to get pushed. That feels kind of bad when you look at the mid lane, but it's not going to be anything major. Interestingly, though, both junglers starting over in the bot side, but since Chad moved away from the vision that was let down inside of the top side jungle, and Perry is actually going to be spotted if he goes for the birds, then they will know where the Wukong is going to try and go for, and that may open up a window for Chad to try and go for some camps.
Certainly, it's going to be a little bit of trade of vision up by the blue side bird camp. Going to be a bit of vision set up over on the red side, bird camp as well for Cincinnati Fear while they look to see what they're going to be able to gain. But as you said, yeah, Sudsy with a big trade win in that level 1 is going to be able to snowball that into another good trade there, as he's the first one to take up to level 2. Just having a pretty grand old time. You can see how that snowballing effect can take place in these really high level mid lane matchups, and Sudsy is very happy to take full advantage.
Exactly, like any bad trade you take at any point in the lane can end up just being so detrimental for you, and that's exactly what Sudsy is doing so far, trying to punish Shochi as much as possible. And I'm really excited to keep on seeing this mid lane matchup. We didn't talk much about how hyped these two players are, but both of these players have the capability of carrying their team. It feels like they are playing mages that are safe and should do consistent damage, but these players are capable of finding game-winning plays even with this sort of champions. So I'm excited to see how they're going to try and perform with the Orianna and the Syndra, and how much impact will they have in the game with these champions.
Yeah, I agree. Massive fan of both of these players. I think definitely Shochi has proven himself as being a massive carry threat at this level of play, and I think Sudsy, even looking back as recently as last week, was such a massive integral part of their wins in the later game up against CCG Futures. CCG were going for such dive heavy compositions. It was so difficult for Neo to play the game. They really needed Sudsy on the Azir to have those clutch moments to be able to come out on top, and he's able to do that, and he's able to pull off those kind of plays. Now on the Orianna in game number 1, they're going to be trying to find a way for him to do the exact same.
Yeah, they have to find the possibility for him to perform like this, and it's not going to be impossible. Their composition does provide opportunities for that, and as long as they are not completely shut down early on, which shouldn't be the case, then everything should be quite easy for them to try and play out. That being said, not a lot of action to start of the game. Both junglers just playing passively into collecting both of their jungles. They are just getting pushed in each of the lanes, so not much attention into solo kills from any of these champions. And then the fact that the objectives have yet to spawn really cannot set up for anything valuable as of now, although Alarim looking quite aggressive here.
Yeah, definitely. This is one of those potential mismatches we called on out. Alorum, with so much experience in this position, has been playing it for years on years at this point. Meanwhile, Toasty picked it up for this split, still doesn't play it primarily, and is a very young, new to the scene player regardless, even in his main position. That's definitely going to be something that Alorum is looking to exploit. He called out in his post-match interview last week that he is going to give Toasty the hands. And so far, he's given him a little bit of something. It's not crazy, but it's a solid 2-wave CS lead.
I will say though, Toasty got the counter pick technically, and he's suffering at this point in the game. Maybe eventually you're going to see Toasty having a much easier time, especially knowing how powerful Jax will become later on in the game. But it also feels like Alarim just has the better understanding of the lane, like you're pointing out. The fact that he has way more experience just sets him up much better for success, because he's setting up better those lanes, setting up better those plays, and allowing for himself to be put in a really good spot, especially without any jungle attention.
And the threat of an engage there, plus the level 6 for Shochi versus not for Sudsy, pushes Mirage Alliance back from trying that that dragon take rather. They start it up, but upon seeing that Perry's making his way over, they decide that it's just not the call. They create a little bit more space and just have to reset. So an attempted start on the dragon does get thwarted there by Cincinnati Fear. 2 minutes to go on the Rift Herald until there's really an opportunity to trade for those sorts of objectives.
It's gonna be an opportunity for both of these teams. Importantly though, because of how they forced them out, it also set up a bit of the success for the bot lane. Minui getting not only a couple more minions into his favor of Shochi.
Dardoch has arrived with a little bit of a gank on Shochi. Does not land the Cosmic Binding though, and will get stunned up. ZZ Legendary going to use him as fodder to stack on up that Black Mist, but otherwise all parties are going to disengage. Perry even making a little bit of an appearance in mid lane in case stuff got dicey. Perry will retreat away, as will everybody else.
Actually surprised that Perry didn't follow up a bit more aggressively into that play because there was no jungle close by. He actually was in a straight line going towards the board. I think maybe the fear from Satsu with the ultimate was a bit too heavy in that play, but at the end they do force quite a bit of damage onto Dardog. They get stacks onto CC Legendary, which is not the biggest prize, but you take anything you can. And also stacks on the Syndra, so it's a victory to a certain degree.
Yeah, definitely is here as that attempted binding there from that Seraphine not going to end up connecting. It's Chad hovering around the top side, but spotted on that Skull Shrine, so not going to come away with too much. Perry gonna find him here. Way stronger in the one-on-one is Perry, so as long as he knows Alorum is a decent distance away, he'll be happy to take those trades.
Exactly. It's all on how far the Renekton and the Orianna is from the play. If they are close by to try and collapse on, they probably don't want to force anything. Even if it's Perry on the Wukong, he probably doesn't want to force any sort of bad trade. But in the case they aren't even close by, that can be something they can play around with as Shockwave onto Shochi, and here comes Shad. He actually can kill.
Yeah, great damage there onto Shochi. Sets up for an easy execute from Chad. And that will be first blood going over to Mirage. Really snowballing all from the level 1 there. Sudsy playing out such a great lane up against Shochi, and will end up with a kill to his jungler's name and assist gold to himself.
Already starting so good for the side of Mirage Alliance with that first blood going into the pockets of Shad, yes, but it's still such a good first blood that they get. It also opens up the space to go for the Rift Herald, and as Fear recognize the sort of situation, they are going to go for the dragon on the other side of the map. It's objective for objective, but it's a really valuable objective that the side of Mirage is getting, especially if they can try and push the issue, be it in the mid lane or in the top lane with this Rift Herald.
Definitely here. It's breaking out of their little bit of a shell in that top lane. Do end up securing themselves that Rift Herald and going to just keep snowballing things in the favor of Mirage Alliance ever so slightly. See where Chad wants to dedicate that. Are they going to look to keep playing through mid, or do they want to get a little bit more gold infused into Alorum? He's got himself a sizable lead already in this top lane, and this could get out of control real quick.
Yeah, and there was a slight opportunity that, oh, Toasty.
Great call there. Yeah, Alorum just gets right back in with the slice and dice, finds a solid trade up against Toasty, and is going to force him to expend that flash in trade for the Dominus. And now fully stacked up Rage Bar. I mean, Toasty, it's real dangerous to be farming here. Meanwhile, Dardoch caught on the bot side. Jungle full combo from Shochi, and Perry will end the Bard and get Fear on the board.
Oh, Toasty's probably dead. Chad is already up there with Rift Herald. Yeah, there's no escape. Teleport?
No chance here for Toasty, although getting shielded up by that Dawning Shadow with the teleport from Shochi. I guess there is an escape, TDS, because Dawning Shadow plus the addition of the TP really gets Toasty a lot of security, and Mirage Alliance just aren't willing to tussle with that.
Yeah, I guess they were not confident enough without Dominus up from Alarim. I was thinking there was not going to be an opportunity for escape, but really nice quick teleport there by Shochi to just not only react to the play, but protect Toasty for as much as possible. They do lose a lot of gold anyway with the Rift Herald, and also open up a bit more space once again in the mid lane for the Orianna to just get a bit of advantage over the Syndra. That being said, I still think that it's not that bad. Oh, flash.
CC Legendary forced to expend that, but Alorum hunting for first turret gold here, and as long as he is a little bit conservative with approach, doesn't give up anything to Perry for free, he is on great track to be able to secure it. Only one plate remaining. That would be so much gold into the Renekton. Already is so much gold into the Renekton, and he's about to try to get a recall off to be able to spend some of that, but the crashing wave means it's going to have to wait a little while.
Yeah, he more than likely will get it in the next couple of pushes. Probably not the next one, but the one after that, more than likely it's going to be where he gets it. That being said, it's not impossible for Fear to try and play around it, and the early turret falling down may enable Toasty to try and get back. Oh, gold. Toasty actually other him.
Wow, big turnaround from Toasty there. The dive coming out through Dominus, going to give Alorum just enough HP to escape, but he's going to have to give Toasty some alone time with this turret, and Toasty's going to have an opportunity to get some impound back here off the back of those turret plates. Meanwhile, Manui and CZ Legendary see a trade opportunity onto Dardoch, going to get a little bit of damage in onto him, but are going to get backed away by Neo. He's got the green-white, the full poke set up, and they do not want to have to deal with that poke damage for very long.
I'm actually kind of curious. Is that the first time we've seen Toasty actually be able to fight head-to-head against Alarim? Because that was such a good trade by Toasty, and it almost made it happen in terms of kills. But now Alarim is coming back with a full item, and maybe Toasty is staying a bit too long up there. It's not going to be the case. I wish we had, honestly, it's such a small detail, but I'm kind of curious how close that ultimate was by Alarim, because it feels like maybe Toasty, because of the second it took for him to get the kill, the Dominos came up just in time to try and get it. Oh.
Yeah, full engage in the mid lane. That's going to be Sudsy forced back. He is stunned on up. He is taken down by the Dawning Shadow, and Perry going to be able to cash out with that kill, but the fight's not over yet. Shad did expend that Magnet Storm, but flashed away from it, looks like, by Perry. Means that they will not be able to find the kill, and Shochi, just trying to reclaim push to the mid lane, will end up a kill positive when all is said and done.
That was such a good shockwave by Satsi there, able to at the very least separate Perry for a bit there in the play, but at the end it doesn't really matter. They don't find the kill onto Perry, and they instead find the kill onto Satsi, even below the flash from the Orianna. And you could argue, yes, it was a flash for flash, but getting the flash off of the Orianna is going to be much more dangerous for the Orianna, because the Wukong can try and cut distances really effectively. The Orianna doesn't really have any more tools to escape apart from that flash.
Exactly. Now setting on up for this dragon that's potentially spawning here in about 20 seconds. Does look like Cincinnati Fear want to be here in time. Neo, though, has the Gravitum Snare going all in onto Manui, who will be forced to flash away from the Tempered Fate. A crucial resource blown away from the Seraphine to start things off as Alorum ticks level 11 and has a big trade up against Toasty. Lots of opportunities for violence here. TDS is Perry going in for the engage on towards Sudsy, who will hide out underneath his turret. Mid laner chunked out, bot laner chunked out on the other side as the dragon does arrive to the rift.
Yeah, the difference is who has teleport and who doesn't. As we see, Dardo getting engaged, but it's not going to be a big deal. The thing is here, what we were talking about, Sotsi did get chunked down, but he has teleport, so he can come back into the play in case he wants to force a fight here for the second dragon. Whereas Minui did force the flash, so he doesn't have a lot of tools to try and escape. It doesn't look like MA is going to try and contest this dragon, and it's going to be second dragon in favor of the side of Fear. And it's also a really, really good soul. If Fear gets this, I don't like calling games in any way over before they actually are over, but it's Ocean Soul, Seraphine, Senna. That's way too much healing to try and deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, as there's been such an advantage built on up in the early game. I've been really impressed with how Cincinnati Fear have been able to play this one. They find a way to avoid any potential ganks coming through from Chad. They managed to end up kill positive. Toasty is sustaining himself just fine in that top lane. He stopped the bleeding, even though he lost his first turret. He's catching up in CS and was even able to find some good trades. And now they're going to rotate members around the map to see what else can be garnered, but have to see what Mirage Alliance can do. Try to get themselves a lead here. Is pretty even in the gold, and they are falling back on this heavy scaling of the Orianna Felios, so not done by any means. That knockup going to connect from Chad. Toasty in a little bit of a 1v3 scenario, does dodge out on the Magnet Storm, can't dodge out on the Tempered Fate though. With a fourth member collapsing in, surely they need to get this kill though. Pulled back in by the Shockwave, dodging out on the auto attack. Toasty survives a gank of 4 members, and meanwhile his team, they're just snagging Rift Herald and anything else they want.
You know what? I'm glad the 4 doesn't kill the 1, just because it felt really unfair towards Toasty. But that is such a big play for the side of Fear, because without committing anything, they pretty much not only get the Rift Herald, but now even more so with the push down there, over there in the mid lane. Plus Perry trying to collapse onto Alarim. They can actually try and force a kill if Alarim is not careful enough. Has to run away, and it's going to be 2 turrets pressured, and also Toasty staying alive. I like the idea from MA, but it felt like Satsi was a bit not sure into what he wanted to approach. He walked back, then walked back in, and then at the time it was really difficult for it to actually work out in their favor.
Definitely here, as that's going to be a little bit of poke coming on through from Manui up against Neo, but he's able to dodge on out and keep on fighting for this mid wave. That turret very low for Mirage Alliance here. You know that Cincinnati Fear would love to snag that and get a little bit of this standing gold back for themselves. They've managed to keep the gold lead pretty much dead even despite being down those 2 turrets, so can balloon themselves up ahead if they are able to cash on out. Good turnaround by Toasty. Ooh, up nice. Against Alorum as well on the bottom side, going to chunk out him a little bit and really starting to get more competitive in these fights as that mid lane turret will fall. And Mirage Alliance, they just cannot stage a response.
Can now Toasty is beginning to actually fight back onto Alorum. He's not losing out on many of those trades. He's actually surviving quite well and able to force a lot of pressure down during the bot lane. It also baited out Alorum's teleport, which means that if there's a play on the other side of the map, there's no opportunity for Alorum to actually collapse onto it because he has no teleport. Really like the way that Fear played around the map in the last couple of minutes, because it not only forced MA into a really weird spot where they have to respond aggressively for multiple.
Oh, the stun coming on through. Perry tanking up the turret for way too long, though. Nearly going to end up going down. As Sudsy had landed a little combo on him with the dissonance. Could have potentially spelled the end, but they get the turret and they get out safely. Now tied up in the tower department. As here comes Dardoch looking to set up a dive. Lands that Cosmic Radiance on towards 2. Here's going to be the jump back on in. Minui going to be locked on down by the Magnet Storm, and Neo going to melt him down. Neo stays standing. Toasty's TP is interrupted, and now Shochi in a 1 versus 3 in his own right has to flash out the safety, but Dardoch will find him with the Cosmic Binding and take him out. But Cincinnati Fear are striking back. Shochi able to get the kill out of Dardoch. ZZ Legendary able to execute on the other side as Alorum is pushed out by Toasty, but Toasty's high enough HP that he wants to keep this fight going. Can't collapse the gap though, and Mirage Alliance will escape.
That was such a long fight, but at the end it does benefit Emmy by at the very least a bit more. They get the kill onto Chat, they get the kill onto Dardoch, that's true, but they also lost out on Chochi and Minui, 2 of the biggest or most important members from the team, and I love the setup with Dardoch trying to lock down onto the Seraphine as much as possible. The timing on the stun is what ends up messing up a bit of the play because they cannot layer down their CC accordingly. They don't blow out the Seraphine fast enough, and that means that the play doesn't really just ends up being a really quick kill onto Minui, then immediately moving into a really quick kill onto Shochi. That is why Chad loses out on so much HP. That is why Dardoch loses out on so much HP, and that's why at the end it ends up being a more equal trade than what it could have been. But they did stop Toasty's teleport, and they also won a lot of good control over the map because they did take down the mid lane turret, as we see now a new setup.
All right, another fight potentially breaking out here. Dardoch going to be able to get out. I do want to call out in that last fight, we missed it at the time, but the interrupt from Shochi on that magical journey for Neo, really doing a huge work there. Dardoch chunked to about half HP as they fight over Dragon number 3. Mirage Alliance not going to want to give up the soul point without a fight, as this 4-man squad is collapsing on in Alorum on the flank, but needs to be able to pull the trigger with the assistance of his teammates, or he's just going to get blown right out of the water. He's got access to the Dominus. We'll be looking to pop that one pretty soon as the poke damage comes on through from Sudsy. Perry chunked to about half HP. Toasty keeping Alorum at bay and has the backup of Shochi while he does it. Neo, DPS onto the Dragon. It's going to be a 50-50 Destiny engage from Perry. He gets the knock up on a Sudsy. There's going to be the charm across them with the Encore. With the dive into the back line. Perry finishes off Sudsy, but will get traded back. But he dives back through. Finally, Neo going to be able to take him out with the Moonlight Vigil. But Toasty is popping off in the fight. Staying strong. Flashes over the wall. Finishes off Dardoch. And it's a 4-for-1 for Cincinnati Fear.
And Shochi doesn't die at the end there, gets enough damage, and it's going to be not only a team fight victory for Fear, but also the Dragon going into their pockets. And that was such a long team fight. It started way before the Dragon even spawned or was spawning there, but by the time they were trying to just measure up onto each other, Perry took way too much damage. It took them a lot of time to actually engage, but it's Perry that starts it. Flashes, ultis, and then gets out with the clone. Really nice because he gets stunned. Yes, but the second invisibility there actually sets them up perfectly. And this is what we talked about with the Bard. Because yes, it looks amazing, the engage, don't get me wrong, but that was going to be a 4-man engage, and it turned into a 2-man engage. So the value of the Bard ultimate does end up taking away from the value from the Rel and the Renekton. What could have been a 4-man engage that sets up the teamfight victory ends up turning into a 2-man, and then the Sen and the Seraphine get free reign to actually play the teamfight. That could have been either Bard forcing the fight a bit too earlier with the ultimate, or Rel and the Renekton not really reading the situation accordingly and jumping a bit too quick onto the play. But that slight difference is what wins Fear the fight, because at that point could have been a big moment for them, turns into disaster.
Definitely the case here, and great damage knowledge from Perry as well. Got to keep praising this guy's Wukong. He dives in 1 versus 3. He knows that he can take out Sudsy, and he does so. Huge influence in the fight there. Really mitigates the amount of damage output that the Mirage Alliance squad can put out in that fight once their Orianna is down. And now just going to be really rolling in dough now coming into this later game. ZZ Legendary's got himself 3 kills. That's going to really help out that support budget that the Senna is on for a lot of this game, and just getting stronger and stronger as the game goes on, showing a lot of team fighting power here with that Seraphine.
Yeah, that Seraphine is going to be one of the most scary champions to try and deal with later on in the game. Already close to completing the Seraphines, although I'm not sure if the Seraphine is actually going to go the Seraphs just because of the build path, but it's still going to be a champion that you have to completely worry about the longer the game goes. 3 items, that's a point where you're just going to be dealing with so much healing. And then the Syndra as well. She may not be, I would say, built in the most strongest fashion because she did opt into the Banshees, but the stacks are coming through. Like, Syndra at this point should be close to getting the execute if not already having it, and that means that you're going to actually be feeling so much pain from the Syndra. The damage from the abilities, the execute potential paired up with the damage from the Wukong, everything is just going to be so much harder to deal with. And Neo, even if you're able to dash away, if Syndra presses R on you, you're closer to death than to surviving.
Absolutely. Here is Toasty launching himself in, brawling with Alorum. Alorum down to half HP here.
That's so much.
Alorum's trying to reach it back up. He is not winning this one-on-one anymore. Toasty is tanking tower shots and still getting that Sterix gauge cooldown blown. This top lane matchup has officially swapped on its head, as even while down items, Toasty is able to find winning trades.
And it's also why I think the fact that now the Renekton, even though he probably can force a fight in some moments, he also lost out in a 2-item to 1-item fight. Like with turret shots, like you were mentioning, the Serac shield also was popped, and he still was losing out on those fights. There's a point where you're feeling really scary as a Renekton, because the Jax can just end up winning you the fight with you really having much of a choice. Maybe with the dominance that changes a bit, but at this point it doesn't feel like that. Like, Toasty just winning these trades really effectively, and the longer the game goes, the easier it is for him to get that sort of setup. And as we're looking for 50 seconds for the next dragon, the soul for Fear, what is the plan from MA? They need to put another sort of engage like that. This time maybe with Sotsi being able to pair up as well, the shockwave with the engage from the rail. But if that's the only play that they have, it has to be sort of a Hail Mary to a certain degree.
Yeah, it's going to have to be perfect. They're going to have to get a glorious team fight to try to turn that one around, as the 3K gold advantage for Cincinnati Fear, plus just how well equipped they are for the 5-on-5.
Oh, there's no Baron.
It's very tough. Here's that Hail Mary you were talking about, TDS's Mirage Alliance have started on up the Baron. Here comes Cincinnati Fear to try to disrupt. Toasty a little bit lagging behind, doesn't want to use the TP, is just going to walk his way up here. Alorum taking a little bit of poke damage as Perry is looking for the engage, backed away from the Baron now, over the wall with the magical journey. Dardoch is trying to turn this one around. Tempered Fate not going to connect. The 5-man stun into the full Cyclone combo. Cincinnati Fear find the perfect engage yet again. Shochi, 8 people stunned in the fight. Cincinnati Fear with an incredible one-sided domination.
And this is why I love Shochi so much. It was instantaneous, by the way. As soon as they lost that fight, it was game over. Let's be honest, I would have assumed that was going to be the case anyway, even without BFF. But that was such a good stun by Shochi. And it's all on the setup that comes in from this. The Hail Mary play is go for the Baron. I don't dislike the idea, but when Aurum is taking this sort of beating and everyone is collapsing into that threshold like they did, it just enables Shochi to find this perfect setup. 5 into the Wukong follow-up engage. Like, even without the ultimate from the Senna, that was going to work out. And they didn't even use Seraphine ultimate, by the way, until the very last moment, and it failed.
Yeah, and if that 5-man stun wasn't good enough for you, there's a 3-man stun to close out the rest of the stragglers. A perfect opportunity for Shochi on the Syndra. Just absolutely crushes Mirage Alliance. Cincinnati Fear starting off with a 1-0 lead.
Yeah, that was a game for Fear. They played it off really, really well. Don't want to take anything from Mirage either. They started the game really, really well. They found good plays. They were forcing a lot onto the weakest parts of the map, the top lane particularly. They took the mid top lane tower super early, but I feel like the game really kind of began losing control when they messed up that bot lane dive. If that bot lane dive works, they kill Toasty once again, they destroy the tier 2 turret more than likely, and then they can move to try and collapse onto multiple members or look to try and get more control for the dragon. But after that point, they were losing control in mid lane, they were losing control in top lane, Shochi and Perry became stronger and stronger, and then Toasty stopped losing matchups. He stopped losing trades against the Renekton, and at the end, it just fell perfectly into place for them with that team fight victory around the dragon. So it just kind of worked out really, really well in their favor.
Yeah, completely agree there. I think they did a fantastic job in the early game. There was that open question. Well, we had such a quiet early game, right? You could see it's pretty much neck and neck all the way up until around 12 to 14-ish minutes. Who does that end up favoring? Who ends up using the scaling a little bit more effectively? I think that Jax just came online so much sooner than I think most of us anticipated. And great team fight setups there, using the Seraphine and the Wukong, end up favoring Cincinnati Fear time and time again as they show just how quickly they can close things out.
Exactly, just kind of fell into place really, really well. And I also think that the fact of how the dragons went, it made it much more difficult for MA, because if they are facing a 2-dragon Fear, I can see them trying to take a step back and not forcing fights at that point, even if that's not the most logical play for them with how their composition works. That still takes away from throwing the game into a fight. But because Fear stacked the dragons, they didn't lose on any dragons, they were on the 3rd dragon, they were forced into a really weird spot because they had to contest the dragons consistently, they had to put themselves into weird spots to force the fights, and when it didn't work out, they just lose really heavily the game. Now, looking into the second game, how are they going to adapt this? I'm feeling a Minui Seraphim ban, even if it wasn't like super impactful, it does impact the fact that Neo doesn't really get the opportunity to shine because Seraphim just exists and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely felt like they had a lot of trouble making anything happen on the bottom side of the map. Felt like that across the board a little bit here. Yeah. But yeah, I definitely do think taking them off, maybe just the Senna ban is enough as well. I still think there's so many possibilities that Senna brings to the table. I think you got to have priority on it if you're up against a team that has priority on it, just because you can't afford to keep giving that one on over and seeing what else they are cooking. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a snag away from Mirage or a ban from them coming into game number 2, but we're going to have to wait and see. We're going to throw it to a quick break while we get into draft for our second game of the night, but don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back as Cincinnati Fear take on Mirage Alliance once again.
Is that all you've got to say?
odds move closer, but with a deeper sweat. Oh, beneath them we look on. When they part comes the hatred they bring. Lost in the dark, we've come so far. Another step to rid the pain. Go and be counted till your last day. 'Cause only nightmares break their face. So stand upon these fallen lands and follow in our Father's plans. Yeah, until the end we will remain, and we'll hold on until our last breath. So what is to be left for us? My people look on and say, don't fear what you don't know, 'cause we're far from certain fate. And we'll make our final stand. Lost in the dark, we've come so far. Another step to
Welcome back, everybody, to the Aegis Champions League, where Cincinnati Fear are up 1-0 over our reigning champions, Mirage Alliance, looking to guarantee a new champion for fall 2023. A lot of people might have called it, but looking at death's door here are the Mirage Alliance squad. We saw them turn this around last week on this exact same stream, TDS, and now they're going to be forced to do it again.
It's going to be an interesting matchup. It's going to be the team that we had a lot of expectations coming into this split as well, because they're the defending champions, put into their backs at this point. It's not an easy situation, but like you're mentioning, they already went through this in the previous week and made it through. That's what mattered. So now, against a team that I would say technically should be better, can they do it once again? That's kind of the big question. And it's going to be important to see Neo and Satsi step up really well. Obviously, the other players as well, but the carries need to step up as much as possible, because those are the ones that have to make the difference happen in this game.
Yeah, and I mean, I gotta see a little bit more from Alorum in the matchup up against Toasty as well, right? We were promised the hands, man, and I hate to put his words up against him, right? Because I love when the players come on here and talk a little trash in their post-match interviews. It's always the most fun. But he promised us that he was going to give Toasty Alex the hands, and I don't think Toasty got the hands too much last game at TDS. He was able to keep it relatively even. I mean, Alorum gets first turret. Alorum gets a solid CS lead, but it doesn't end up meaning anything for the grander game. Toasty is able to scale.
Too?
Yeah, I mean, off of a gank. Yes, that is correct. But and that ended up going over to Chad, if I'm not mistaken. But regardless, it just doesn't end up meeting enough for the game, right? Toasty does the most damage out of all 10 players in the game. He scales up just fine. He becomes a massive threat in the one-on-one. He marks Alorum in the one-on-one for the most important fight of the game around Dragon number 3 and completely takes him out of the fight. All in all, I think, you know, he played the Jack side of that matchup just fine, sacrificed a bit in the early game, and was able to come on out and be very, very dominant.
And that's kind of the main thing to take away. It's not the fact that Alorum couldn't check his hands or anything like that, but I think that it wasn't enough. Like it feels like that, because I do think that he won the lane really effectively. He was first turret, won by a big CS margin, and was able to contain Toasty really effectively. The problem, and there's a thing with the Renekton in general. I won't say it's just Alorum, although I think that he could have pushed the issue a bit more. But it's not a thing with just Alorum. It's in general with the Renekton. If the champion doesn't push the issue when he has the advantage, he's just going to persistently fall behind comparatively to the opponent. Like Jax is going to scale way better. If it's a Fiora, it's going to scale way better. If it's a Camille, I think maybe it's to a certain degree equal, but she's going to scale better. When as well, Aatrox, I think it's going to have more value later on in the game compared to the Aatrox, to the Renekton. So it's difficult to really make the sort of big differences happen when your champion kind of takes away the value that you're trying to have, and then you also don't push the issue accordingly. And it can be a fault of Valorant or from the team, but in general, it wasn't provided enough pressure that you're looking for with the Renekton. They needed to do more, and they lacked that, it felt like.
Completely agree there, and so they're going to need to find somewhere to put that pressure through. I think the other thing that's really easy to look at is Chad on the Rel. Didn't get a lot of really powerful ganks off. Had a lot of, he found opportunities for gravity storms, but they were flashed away from, and it really did not end up paying off big time to have that Rel flexed over to the jungle in order to facilitate the Bard pick. The Bard wasn't really great enough in lane for it to have been worth making the swap, and the Rel in the jungle was not super effective. It's not something that I think Chad... it's not something that I think of when I think of Chad, right? I think of Chad as the carry player. I think of Chad as the guy who's getting that Graves ban right up there. And I think that I want to see him on something leaning in that direction a little bit more, right? His big picks throughout this season, he's played a lot of the Maokai, but he's also played a lot of Kindred, a lot of Nocturne, a lot of the Graves, some Rengar games in there as well. I would love to see him on something like that. And I think that's going to be a pick that they can play around a lot more effectively.
I want to see him more towards that side, and maybe this time around they are going to try and enable him a bit more in that sense. Hopefully he gets more of a carry potential, because that's what we want to see coming in from Chad. And obviously that's also kind of also another thing that maybe Fear lacks, is having more damage on their side to try and push Mirage to try and push even more the issue, have more damage on their side. That being said, looking at the remaining bans, focus towards the mid lane quite a bit. Actually, Mirage taking away the Orianna from Shochi, which is kind of surprising, because even though I do think of Shochi as a player that can play everything, he doesn't tend to favor the Orianna that much. He favors other champions much more so, and he wants to try and flex around the fact that he has a big champion pool, much more so than picking the stronger champions. As we see the picks go through, it's going to be the Ashe that was banned away in the previous game, and I would love to see the Barriers, in all honesty. Barriers with almost any other champion with range in the bot lane just ends up winning the 2v2 really well.
Definitely agree here. And then this is a flex pick for the Mirage Alliance squad as well. We saw in the Cincinnati, not in the Cincinnati Future, this is the Cincinnati Future, not in the CCG Futures series. We saw in the Cincinnati Future series, they took Ezreal Ashe as their duo in the final game. They were able to win through that one. I expect to see this in the support position, but it being flexed to AD is not out of the question. I think Neo's capable of playing it as well. Going to be facing off against that Varus, so the classic Varus Ashe duo is going to be off the table, but we already know that they're willing to pick other stuff with it, and that very well may be what they end up going for this game. Now a chance to lock in a priority jungler as well. The Maokai and the Jarvan are off the board. There's the Nico in the mid lane. That's going to be for Sudsy, we must believe, although TDS Alorum is also an on-hit Nico top kind of man. I'm not going to completely weigh it out of the... I'm not going to say it out of the question.
You're going that way. I was thinking on the other side of the map, this could be an Ashe Nico bot lane as well. Nico can be played in the support position, does have certain matchups where she can excel, and then also the ultimate value is just going to be really, really big. As the buy did come through and they like the point and click CC to try and lock down the Bearers, there's still going to be tools to try and deny it. The Syndra going to be picked once again. I'm sad we're not going to get another Shochi champion different from the Syndra, but he played really, really well with the Syndra. Obviously, 5 to 3-man stun was amazing in the previous game, and if he's able to find anything close to similar to that, that can be game winning, something that we talked about in the previous game from both of these mid laners. So I'm not against them taking the Syndra and trying to play an advantageous mid lane matchup for themselves.
Yeah, no, not at all. So going to be, again, looking to put a lot of faith in Shochi Syndra, and you don't feel any any trepidations about that if you are Syndra, or if you are Cincinnati Fear, if you've got yourself Toasty, and you've got yourself Sudsy. My God, man, I'm done. I ate too much turkey last night, and I just can't get my brain cells firing correctly. But Shochi had such a good Syndra game in game number 1, and that I know, I'm saying truthfully. And if you get him on it again here, you cannot be criticizing that from Cincinnati Fear.
Not at all. I'm just ready to see how Shorty is going to perform as we see the remaining bans from both sides. The Kalista and the Wukong Perry deserves that ban. He played amazingly well. And I think the Caitlyn wouldn't be a bad ban if they are not willing to pick it up themselves. Because the Caitlyn Ashe could be actually quite a strong bot lane duo to deal with. And Varus doesn't have the range to deal with both of those AD carries if MA is willing to play around that. It's the Heimerdinger at the end, and I'm thinking something like the Sejuani could end up coming in as well for the ban for Perry unless he wants to play the Rel. In that case, bottling wise, Lulu wouldn't be that bad of a ban. Or the Milio for the takeaway of the cleanse for the Varus himself.
Yeah, and I cannot blame them for going in for this Wukong ban up against Perry. We've talked about how good he is on the pick. They will be flexing that Rel up into jungle to take Renata for the support position. That's going to be on ZZ Legendary. So Renata Varus duo going to be up against Ashe and TBD. They might just run back the Ashe Ezreal, just say like, hey, yeah, if you're going to be going for this disengage focused support, we can outpoke you and not go for any engage in the first place. And now potentially looking for a tank for Alorum. This would give you quite a bit of team fighting and engage power here. You've got access to the cease and desist. You got access to the Call of the Forge God. You got relatively immobile carries in Varus and Syndra. I think this makes a lot of sense from the Mirage squad.
Yeah, overall, I think it's a really good plan, especially because the fact that it's so long range means that even with the Renata ultimate, you can really try and set up like against it, because you can play it off as bait the Renata ultimate out with the Ornn ultimate, and then you engage with the buy. That is another plan that they can try and look for. There are two slow and mobile champions in the form of the Syndra and the Varus, so there are the buy from the ultimate from the buy can be used in either of them, and it's going to be really valuable. And then you have the long team fight potential thanks to the Ashe, the Ezreal, and the Nico to try and play it up really effectively. I can see that being the plan from MA and try and take a much longer approach for team fights. As we see the last pick as well in the form of the Aatrox, not a bad champion to try and carry the game. Toasty does like to go more for the bruisery kind of champions, even though sometimes it works great and sometimes it doesn't. But against the Ornn, there's not going to be that much pressure onto you like the Renekton. Like, he's not going to suffer the matchup that much, it feels like.
Yeah, probably not, but we'll have to see how he's going to be able to navigate it. Toasty going in for this Aatrox into the Ornn. I mean, that's a matchup we've seen a million times. Again, going to be a little bit of an opportunity to go aggressive at points, but for the most part, if Alorum plays it safe and stable, he should be just fine, and that has often been the name of the game for Alorum up there in the top lane. So not going to try to duke it out with old Toasty one-on-one this time around. Instead, just going to be looking to support the team coming into the later game and setting up for those massive team fights that this squad should be able to put together. They have often focused a lot of effort towards Neo in the bottom lane, feeling like, hey, this guy is well above the level of the competition. Now going to have that Ezreal, going to have a lot of individual agency to make a lot of plays in this game. That is what Mirage Alliance are going to be expecting from him. Land those skill shots, carry us through these team fights. We'll look for some really fat AoE engages to hold them still for you, and you finish off the rest.
And honestly, with Neo, that it feels like such a good plan. An AD carry that certainly feels like the bare minimum level he is at is an ACL, right? Even though Mirage Alliance was a risky bet in terms of maybe him not reaching the NACL like he did, it's still a place where I think Neo should have been at some point, because he was one of the better, if not the best, AD carries over in the OQs for the previous summer season, and the fact that he's finally back into the NACL really goes to show why he performed really well. And now that he's at that level, I'm excited to see how he's going to perform and how he's going to show his ability against, and how he showed, because I do think that he didn't lose out on the matchup. It's just that Minui kind of neutralized him in the Seraphine matchup. But he's an AD carry that has that level of the NACL, and so far against NACL players themselves, he's been performing really great.
Completely agree with you there. Now we're going to get to see Minui and ZZ Legendary in a little bit more of a traditional bot lane duo. The Varus and then the Enchanter in the Renata. We'll have to see how they're going to be able to navigate that matchup, the 2-on-2, up against this poke-focused duo that Neo and Dardoch have got for themselves. The Ezreal Ashe, they pulled it out against CCG Futures bot lane last week. They did a very good job in that matchup. Now we're going to be looking to do much the same here. I especially like the pivot to Ezreal against the Renata. feels like she just doesn't do a lot in this 2-on-2. Like, she's still going to be plenty powerful as a disengager. The bailout super valuable, especially when you have somebody like an Aatrox who's going to try to be diving on in. But yeah, I just don't think that she represents a whole lot in the 2-on-2 here. And if Mirage are able to find a solid amount of poke, they can really build themselves up a legitimate lead through this bottom lane.
I feel like the main problem that Renata is going to face, like you're pointing out, it's a strong champion in and of itself, but the problem is that in this sort of matchups where there's double range in the enemy bot lane as well, but it's also an AD carry in the bot lane, they're not as reliant in their abilities as the other supports, right? So the fact is that when you use your initial combo, they are going to just keep out attacking you, and they are going to win that trade because their base damages are going to be higher than yours. So it's just a really difficult matchup already in terms of just trying to out damage each other from the initial instances of the game into whatever happens later on. And after that, the fact that even though Renata's disengage is really, really good, one of the big things that the Ashe has, as well as with the Yorn, is the super long range engage. Like, they don't even need to be close to engage onto the Renata, which takes away a bit of the value from the Renata ultimate, because if she doesn't preemptively ults you, then she's not going to be able to throw out the ultimate if she's a stun. She will run, usually the Renata doesn't run cleanse, and it's not going to be the case here either. So if she gets stunned, she's just going to be left there for dead without really using the ultimate, and that's kind of the biggest issue, is that she cannot tank an Ashe arrow because she's dying.
Definitely. And for those who maybe don't foray into Ashe support too often, please note, if you saw her in the patch notes, those were ARAM adjustments to nerf the support Ashe. Summoner's Rift support Ashe still alive and well, still the same champ that it was just the last patch ago. Exactly. So no worries for Dardoch there. He's got the classic old W and R cooldowns. This is not ARAM, at least not until the teams decide to make it ARAM. So we've got ourselves a classic support Ashe, at least as classic as you can make it, doing on up with this Ezreal and with the rest of the Mirage squad. And I think they have a lot of really cool non-committal engage as well. Access to that Enchanted Crystal Arrow and access to that Call to Forge God. That's something I really, really value, especially when you're up against these kinds of immobile carries. You just fish around, see if you find a Varus, see if you find a Syndra, and if you don't, you let that fish go. And you just wait until the cooldown's back on up to have to go for too much. You don't get infinite of those, right? Eventually, Fear is going to take advantage of you missing the cooldowns. They're going to force the issue of the objectives, whatever it happens to be. True. But it's still a good capability to have in your hands. It's always better to have more choices than less, even if you don't want to make a certain choice the majority of the time.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I like the fact that there's more opportunities for MA to just bait out the engage than to just commit to it. You have the Ashe Arrow and the Yorn ultimate once again that when you throw them out, you don't need to follow up on them. You can just throw them out preemptively and force out Fear's disengage or engage potential. Those are committed, by the way. Like, Fear feels more in need to commit to those ultimates than MA does, because those are not only more close range, but also they are more valuable in terms of what they approach for the team and how long they take to be reutilized once again. That's why I think that Fear is going to be more willing to utilize those engage tools more proactively than MA. That being said, there are still really great tools. If MA gets caught by Rel ultimate, Renata ultimate, Aatrox Force, Barry's ultimate as well, like, they can get killed quite quickly. That's still a really big fear, ironically. But at the end of the day, it's how they manage out those ultimates, how they play around those, that it's going to be the biggest issues. And that's why we need to see how each of the players is going to perform. But also, to a certain degree, I want to focus towards the jungle matchup once again, because this time around they have two champions that can make plays as much as possible, similar to the previous game. And in the previous game, it was Perry that got the best out of Chad. This time around, will Chad be able to answer back in a champion that he does know how to play? The Vi is actually one of Chad's champion that I can see him trying to make plays happen and force the team in his favor.
Yeah, completely agree. I love to see Chad off of the Rel. I think Perry is a plenty competent Rel as well. I think he'll be fine on the pick, but yeah, it's no Wukong, right? I think his Wukong was absolutely sublime. It was so good in his time in the NACL, and it's been so good in that previous game. Mirage are wise to ban it away here when they get the opportunity to do so, and that ends up pushing him on towards the Rel. Well, let's see exactly how he's going to be able to navigate on it. He's going to hope to do a much better time than Chad did, who was not really able to find a lot of ganks, had a lot of his engages disengaged from effectively, either with a flash out of the Magnet Storm or something like it. And it was very, very difficult for Mirage in that game number 1 to make the rel useful. Now, with a lot of disengaged tools and with a lot of long-range poke focus from Mirage, it feels like that might be the same situation for Perry in this game number 2. But we're going to have to see if he can find a way around it, either through the support of his teammates or otherwise.
It's going to be one of those situations where we need to see how they are going to face it. Like, one of the big things that can happen is the rail flash used aggressively to try and make the engage happen. Like we saw in Words multiple times, where you proactively flash in, able to evade some of the engage or disengage from the enemy team, and that way you can force the fight in your favor. The problem is that you're playing on a cooldown in that situation, right? You're playing off of your flash. And the flash is not the most consistent tool to try and reach the backlane compared to other champions' abilities like Ornn Ultimate. So if that's how Fear wants to play, can be a little bit risky, can be a little bit difficult because of how much patience you need to have, but it's not impossible to pull off. That being said, I feel like the onus on difficulty to perform, it's much more so on the Fear side than on the MA side. It feels like their composition is just waiting for the pieces to fall into place for it to work out really well. Whereas Fear needs to make everything in their capability to try and put every piece into their favor, and it feels much more difficult in that sense.
All right, and it looks like we are ready to get onto the Rift for game number 2, TDS. So everybody join me in sending it on towards Summoner's Rift. Mirage Alliance with their backs up against the wall. One more loss will eliminate them from the ACL 2023 fall split. Cincinnati Fear, 1 win away from locking top 8. We're starting right now.
And with that, the start is not going to be any level 1s. This time around feels a bit more difficult with multiple long-range carries on the side of Fear and MA, so it probably wasn't going to be the case where we see an initial level 1, but still everyone just in the steering composition and trying to seize up the situation.
Yep, don't expect to see too much spice in this level 1. I don't think either top is especially built for it, unless you find some kind of beautiful pick there on Shochi's Nico, or sorry, Sudsy's Nico. I'm gonna keep messing these guys up, man. They both start with S. They both end with E. It's tough, but Shochi gonna be the victim of a big catch here. Dardoch with a hail of blades, just pumping out the damage, and first blood goes to Neo. Manui gonna be next on the menu as Perry finds a big stun onto Dardoch, but it's a double kill over to Neo. Next up is ZZ Legendary. He's gonna be forced to flash away. A disaster for Cincinnati Fear at level 1.
Yeah, talk about a start for Fear, with MA finding not only the right play, but playing according to what they have. It's the start with the rain of arrows from the Ash, just dealing so much damage and they cannot run away. And there's the thing, it's double 80 carry. They are going to just deal enough damage with the range advantage, and they did that perfectly in that situation. 2 kills for Neo, and went into the champion that you 100% wanted it to go to.
Well, we talked about Mirage Alliance wanting to play through Neo in this game. They could not ask for a better start to do so. He is well and truly ahead. Hasn't gotten to spend yet, so it's going to be a little bit before we see that big 600 gold injection manifest itself, or 700 gold, actually, now that I think about it. But still a great series of early trades here. Neo going to take that level 2 first, and already they're making Manui and ZZ Legendary feel the pain.
Yeah, this is going to be such a difficult bot lane now. It was already going to be a bit harsh with the fact that it was level 2 or 2 range that he carries against just 1, and a support that has the advantage in range. But now with this sort of lead, with Neo already starting so strong, also Neo didn't use his spot, so actually he's going to have a slight bit of health advantage over Minui as well.
Just a slight bit here as nice poke damage coming on through from Toasty on towards Alorum. Alorum trying to fight it out, but falling very, very low. Here comes Chad to try to turn the play around. Going to dodge out with the Umbral Dash very nicely to keep himself safe. And now they're just going to have to use Chad's time to push this wave in and make sure that Alorum doesn't get completely sucked out of the game. Now Perry coming on in for a little bit of a play towards Dardoch. Dardoch does not have access to the flash. He will be going down, and Manui gets a kill back.
Yeah, that at the very least was one of the easiest kills you could have gotten in that situation because no flash on the Ashe, that means that she has no way to escape. It goes onto Minui as well, which is the most important part, getting the gold onto the carry to try and contest at the very least something onto Neo is really, really important, and they get the kill in that situation. Also, to give props to Toasty, I think he played around that gank really, really well, and if he was a tad bit more aggressive, probably could have gone for the kill as well, I feel like.
Yeah, definitely is a world where he expends the flash or something for the big outplay. Instead, Alorum flashes into him, not quite going to be able to find the kill. But the flashes get expended one way or the other, except this time it's Alorum trying to force the kill onto Toasty.
You know what, Gordo? It's fine. You know the most important part is we didn't caster curse Toasty. That's the most important part.
Oh, but there's a big trade found by Sudsy looking for the solo kill. The scatter the weak stun is not enough, and Sudsy takes down Shochi in the one-on-one.
And it's not the first time. In the previous game, Satsi also got a kill onto Shochi. This time around a bit easier since you're 2-0 or 0-2 or against the Syndra, whereas the Syndra is in a really tough spot. So it was going to work out a bit better for Satsi, but so far, MA is firing on all cylinders, and whatever they talked about between games feels like worked out because they are running the show so far this game.
Absolutely great start for Mirage Alliance here, and they are not slowing down as Chad shows himself in the enemy jungle a little bit, decides that he thinks better of it, and is going to get himself out of there, but just trying to keep that pressure on towards Perry. Knows that he's stronger in the one-on-one and is interested in utilizing that power. So now you can see Neo's gotten his opportunity to cash out from those early kills. He's got a CS advantage as well, and he's rocking up to bot lane with a Sheen, a Tear of the Goddess, and a longsword. Going to be well ahead of where Minui is at this point in the game.
It's a big difference to what you can try and have as Minui, but at the very least you do have some fighting power. With this, there's going to be a slight difference in favor of Neo, but I don't think it's massive enough that you're going to feel it as Minui at this point. If it was an item to just components, that's a big difference. But at this point, it's much more doable for them. Dardoch takes quite a good amount of trading, actually. They use the heal.
Yeah, this is a rough fight. The passive from the Varus is just so strong here, nearly taking down Dardoch, who will survive thanks to the summoner heal. But yeah, definitely not the poke-focused approach overall you want. But here comes Chad to make it unfair. Great stop from ZZ Legendary. He connects with the handshake and takes out Chad from the fight.
Okay, I said Season Legendary was going to be a bit difference between them and Dardoch, but damn, that was a really smooth play there, canceling the engage from Chad and saving the life from Minui. And also, I take it back a bit about the damage. If the Varus has one longsword there, Dardoch dies. That's the difference in damage there. That certainly did end up mattering in that situation. They did force the Ashe off of the play, had to use the heal, but they committed the flash and the heal from the Varus and the Renata, which is not a small amount of commitment from them.
Yeah, and you know, between seeing these Varus players in ACL and seeing Gumayushi at Worlds, two sides of the same coin there. Yep. I gotta spam some Varus games or something to try to figure out this damage math, because clearly I have no idea how much damage Varus does. Because they'll just pop out a kill from 100 to 0 out of nowhere. These guys are so good on that champion. It has such burst potential if you get it into the right scenarios.
One of the big things I've noticed with the Varus, and I do completely agree, depending on how many games you have, the difference between being able to kill certain champions and killing certain players is really big. And one of the big things I've noticed around that, it's the use of the passive, but not particularly the 3-hit passive, more so the W passive active, where if you use it according with the Q, you can just get a huge burst that a lot of people don't expect. That's also how you steal dragons, by the way, and Barons. It's how you use that active, and the difference between great players and good players really come off of that slight difference as well.
Completely agree. It's such a long cooldown too. It's so easy to use suboptimally and not get good value for it, that when you are able to find those moments, it's just all the more valuable. You can see the fight back to even in the bottom lane. A reset was successfully pulled off for Neo and Dardoch, and a fair amount of that CS gap has been closed out on. They were up a little over 10 CS before, now just about 6. As this wave is crashing on in, we'll see how much of it Minui is able to secure for himself. Good harass coming in from Alorum on towards Toasty in that top lane, but it's not manifesting as any sort of lead. They're pretty much dead even There's a good dodge there from Manui and CZ Legendary, going to get a little field goal there out of the True Shot Mirage.
Yeah, honestly, after the initial trades that we saw top lane, now Alorum feels a bit more accommodated in the lane. Maybe the help from chat did impact a lot of how bad it went. As they are trying to set up this dive, there's no flash steal.
Oh, there's going to be the full dive from Mirage, and a kill goes over to Alorum. Well played to punish Toasty, who's been stuck underneath his turret for a while, and now Alorum has manifested a legitimate lead over his top lane counterpart. Perry going to have to show to be able to catch that wave. That now might be an opportunity building for a play to be made on the bottom side. It is Shochi on the move first, getting into that river. And instead, actually, Sudsy is just going to move on up and say, hey, guys, it's Rift Herald time. Alorum's got the TP. We just took down Toasty. There could be a good shot here.
Yeah, they have complete lead all around the map to try and pull off this play. Minui is also really close to dying, actually, here. Took way too much poke, and now it's kind of in a tough spot. Even though Shochi's coming down, maybe he can get the kill.
Well, focusing in on down here. Shochi looking for the stun, cannot find it. Neo and Dardoch wisely back away. They keep a safe distance and are going to be able to get away with their lives.
And that means that now it's going to be reset timing for both Minui and CC Legendary, not going to turn into much damage for them. Toasty also just pushing the wave, not much going to be obtained here, apart from a tad bit of damage onto Alarim. But the way that the game has been played for MA is just so much better in their favor compared to the previous game. A lot of that off of the level 1 that worked out marvelously for them, but also how they play the continuation of the game. They have leads in every lane apart from jungle, and they are making the most out of them.
Definitely. Alorum finding another big trade onto Toasty here. Toasty going to do his best to equalize, but the item advantage for Alorum showing itself right now as he gets the grass proc to get his health back up as well. Toasty chunked out underneath his turret.
And Toasty keeps on taking a really bad amount of trades near the turret. Alarim has just been finding that good opportunity to make the most out of it, and so far the counter hasn't really been felt in favor of Toasty. In the same vein as Shochi, he countered for the Nico, but just completely gets pushed under turret and not much in his favor.
Not too much at all here. Alarum going to just keep that push on going. Meanwhile, mid lane going to be pretty close, but overall favoring Sudsy as well. He's really been able to keep down Shochi after that solo kill, has built himself up a solid CS lead, and has even gotten his name on some of these other kills breaking out as well. Mirage Alliance having a much better time in this game number 2 than they did in the first, and doing a good job of trying to push themselves deeper into this series.
And this is the kind of thing we were expecting from Mirage Alliance. We know they are not a team that are going to just be pushed back and not answer back at all. Like, they have players of renown. They have players that do know how to play around these situations, and they are so far delivering on it. At the very least, at this point in the game, they are doing a really, really good job. And I also want to credit the younger player, quote unquote, in the form of Satsi, that is playing around a lot of veterans, but still not being one step behind them at all. Oh,
bring out the Chains of Corruption. They are going to be able to catch on to Dardoch. He does use the heal, but is still going to get chunked out so fast. Manui able to pick up that kill. Is Fear get another to try to equalize in the bottom lane, but now here's the full combo on the top side coming through from Alorum. Going to be taken down. Toasty Alex in the one-on-one. Mirage equalize over on the other side.
and there's the value of the Ornn. Even if it's not a matchup that you typically see getting a solo kill, it's still working out amazingly well, because the Ornn can kill you from 100 to 0, weirdly enough, as a tank, and it finds the kill in a perfect spot. I also think Toasty a bit of a misplay there, not using the healing to its maximum effect, and maybe the fact that he's not a top laner really displaying in that situation.
Definitely here. Setting up now for Dragon number 2. Mirage focusing multiple members towards the bottom side. It looks like Perry may very well be en route himself. Don't know what the soul is going to be yet, but no, it is going to be one of those classic 4. It is Hextech and Chemtech to start us out. What is going to be the pickup here? Teleport channel towards the top side from Alorum. Teleport also down for Toasty. The Tangle Barb's going to land in mid, but Perry there for the response. The knockup comes on through, and here's the full follow from Chad. He's diving in on towards Shochi. Magnet Storm going to disengage, and an attempted flash away going to be required. The bailout, not enough. Shochi will burn down, and another kill goes over to Sudsy.
Yeah, the idea is not bad at all, but I do think a bit late on the play there, CZ Legendary with the ultimate could have saved Shochi in that situation. Also, Flash not used defensively by Shochi ends up biting him back and ends up making the play for MA super valuable. They are getting the dragon, they are getting the kill, and they are more than likely also getting a bit more gold in their favor in this. Okay, they don't get the play, but they find the kill and the dragon, which is a big issue for them.
It is a massive problem here. It's now going to be a 2-0 dragon lead over to Mirage. They're ahead in gold, they're ahead in CS, they're ahead in lanes, they're ahead in dragons. They are going to want to secure themselves a first turret here pretty soon. Keep an eye on that second Rift Herald once it shows up. You know that Chad's going to want it to be able to bust through at least one of these towers, as they are now so vulnerable with turret plates dropping off.
It's so easy for them to try and now take the turrets. They have a lot of damage onto multiple turrets, which could turn into easy takedowns eventually. But at this point, it's not like they need to force it. Their composition is going to be completely fine spiking around the 2-item power spike. So it's going to be really well for them. And as long as they don't overly push the issue and give up advantages that they don't need to, the game should be completely in their control.
Should be under their control for sure. Now grouping on up potentially for this next objective is going to be what comes in the future, but for right now everybody just chilling, farming up. Not too much action to be found in Cincinnati Fear. They have not been able to scrape back a lot of plays in this mid-game, early game-ish stage. Been mostly favoring Mirage. They've gotten 2 ganks off bot, but that's all they have really been able to find. And now the damage continues to rain through on towards these structures. Here comes Chad paying a visit towards the top lane. Toasty getting collapsed on again. Will he have any chance of escape? Nearly pulled back on in by the chains, but focus onto the turret going to be successful. And here comes the chain knockups. Toasty nowhere left to go, trying to escape with the healing with the World Ender. Gets a little bit back off the auto, but it's not going to be enough. Chad will take him down.
Maybe with the flash he could have tried and escape once again, but yeah, with the turret down, it's so easy for them to get the kill. And this time around, they are really trying to just completely punish Toasty as much as possible. They saw the angle, and now they are trying to hammer down the sub laner as much as they can. They know that he is not playing his natural role, and they are making sure that he doesn't play it again.
It's really taking the fight to him in this game number 2. Allura, he just needed to be on something a little bit more comfortable, right? Don't give me the Crocodile, give me the Ornn. It's a nice fight breaking out in the bottom lane. Manui going to be forced to use the cleanse to get out of the enchanted crystal arrow, but going to take the full combo anyway. Good dodge from Dardoch, outranges that chains of corruption. And Shochi arriving to the play, but just getting blown up for it. It's a 1-for-1 to start things up. Manui has got to be the target as the focus damage is coming on through, but the chain CC is too much. Finally, it's going to be a 1-for-1. 80 carry for 80 carry, but ZZ Legendary caught between a rock and a hard place with Sudsy, who gets himself his 3rd of the game, and a chase down onto Perry should cement this as a win for Mirage.
That was such a nicely executed fight coming in from Mirage in the way that they answered, but Fear, with the back of Minui, able to take at the very least a fine enough trade. It started off with Minui taking a lot of damage and insta-cleanse as well, but even with all of that coming through, they are still able to get the kill onto Dardo quick enough, and then the back kill onto the, if I'm not wrong, it was onto the Vi, or no, actually onto Neo, so taking down the enemy AD carry as well, really well with how they forced it, and at the end, forcing it is what matters. Allurim.
Going again into Toasty Alex. World Ender going to be popped. Allura thinks he can win this as long as he's got Dardoch backing him up. There's the Searing Charge away, and now they're going to try to chase down Toasty using these slows. Enchanted Crystal Arrow connects, slows from the Ashe passive, and Dardoch will be the one to claim Toasty Alex for the 4th time.
Toasty is not going to be able to leave anything at all this game. He's just going to get collapsed on and killed on as much as possible. The remaining of the play from the previous, from the last minute, the re-engage and then the kill immediately onto Neo, really nicely played there by Minui, knowing the amount of damage that he can deal and understanding that he is dead. So even if he dies, it doesn't really matter because he at the very least can try and take someone down with him.
And that's what the objective is going to be. Chad, very powerful on this Vi. He's such a threat towards anyone on the back line that he is able to connect with and lock down. And It's going to be so difficult to peel him off. ZZ Legendary with the hostile takeover is the best chance they have of doing it. It's just hard to execute on that correctly over and over again. As Alorum going to face check into 4. They're going to dump everything, but he just flashes back over the wall, down the summoner, but will get out with his life and at a high enough HP total that he can still challenge for this dragon number 3. But now forcing everything in towards the bot lane. They want to collapse on towards Sudsy. He gets stunned up by the scout of the week. He's going to flash on in with the pop blossom as Chad arrives to the play, and Chad smells blood in the water. Every carry for Fear will get torn asunder by the Vi, and Mirage Alliance will secure themselves the dragon.
Perfectly played by AMA in that situation. Not only playing around the fact that they were hiding with Chad on the side and forcing the play in their favor, but also that they take a resounding teamfight victory. More than likely the dragon coming up that is flying away and then going back into his space, and then also taking a couple of turrets as well. Everything going in favor of the side of Mirage. Oh, and even more.
Full combo on towards Perry. They are going to look to blow him up, and they will. Just as Shochi and Manui arrive back on the scene, they are down a jungler, and another Tangle Barbs connects. Shochi chunked out immediately. Manui trying to lock down onto somebody. He has no chains of corruption. The CC is not going to present itself, but Toasty on the TP off the back line focuses down Dardoch and is channeling on towards Chad. Chad goes over the wall. It's every man for themselves, and Sudsy will be the next one to drop. Now the rest of the team just trying to escape in time. Chad going to get found by Toasty and immediately retreats with the Vault Breaker. This dragon should be able to be secured by Fear. Mirage Alliance, they soared too close to the sun and they give up a lot.
Yeah, they gave up a couple of kills. They still are so heavily in the driver's seat that it shouldn't matter that much, but they gave up 1 dragon plus the bounty. So overall, not a bad amount of gold that the side of Fear is getting back. That being said, the push still did its damage. They did take a really important teamfight victory, and they also killed Perry, which it's overall a victory for them. And now looking into what can come in the future. Giving gold to the barriers is good. Giving gold to the Syndra is good. Toasty doesn't get that much gold, but he's still trying to find his footing in the game. The problem is how they can translate the gold that they got into important value later on, as Perry may get engaged on here actually.
Yeah, Dardoch taking the brunt of the damage to start things off. Crashdown connects, and they're just going to blow Dardoch up. Now Neo getting chased down by the rest. He's going to have to flash out the Duskblade, doing a lot of work there for Toasty, as Alorum has to try to defend his AD carry. A nice double knock up off the Searing Charge. Toasty wants it all, diving into the back line, but taken down as Neo shoots him in the face. Now on the wall comes Chad. He's found Manui. The carries are again going to be the target, and Chad does not miss. A double kill for Mirage.
They forced too heavily. They did an MA where they had the initial fight in their favor, but they were forcing too heavily without having any information. And I like the idea, don't get me wrong. I like that they are committing, but you have to commit to a certain point. When you pass a certain line, that's impossible to follow up on it. And after they get Dardoch, after they know that Alarim is in that position, you cannot force at all at that point because you're going to die. This initial play is amazingly good because they kill Dardoch and then they force the flash up of Neo. But here, when you know Alarim is there, you cannot commit anymore because now you know that multiple members are going to be arriving and it's going to take you longer to win this fight. And that's exactly why they end up losing it so heavily.
Yeah, completely agree. Once they're stuck in that little corridor, both the Nico and the Ornn are just so valuable. And now Chad arrives to the scene to clean up the rest. He's got the damage, he's got the lockdown, and there is no chance for the Cincinnati Fear carries at that point. Perry finding himself face-to-face with Sudsy on the bottom side of the map, but neither is going to mess with the other too dang much. Cash outs coming on from across the board as Mirage did secure the Baron in the picture-in-picture. A jump out from Fear on towards Alorum. He is taking a fair bit of damage. Searing Charge his way out. Teleport in. This is Sudsy looking to rejoin the fight. World Ender is popped. Here comes Call, the Forge God. They want Shochi. Pop Blossom going to get pushed back away. They're going to settle for Toasty instead, and he's going to get taken down. Now Shochi left out here, too deep, too outnumbered, will drop. It's a 2-for-1 in favor of Mirage.
They have the numbers once again in their favor, and that's why they win the fight once again. And it's something that Mirage has done so far this game really good well, that Fear hasn't really gotten the right answer for it. And it's making the plays with the right amount of numbers. It feels like they think that they have the advantage until they don't. They have one more member until they have one less. So it's just MA realizing the situation much better and being ready to react and putting the numbers in the right place. And it's working out for them marvelously because they've won multiple fights thanks to this advantage.
They certainly have, getting over and over again, finding the picks, finding the angles there for Chad. He's got the upgraded Ornn item now, the Deicide in his inventory. Going to be so dangerous and just able to blow his way through anybody in the way of him. You can see even in that last fight, Sudsy as well. He wanted Shochi, but he'll settle for Toasty, and they work their way through that frontliner pretty quickly. The lethality Aatrox build, not tanky enough to be able to withstand how big of a gold lead Mirage Alliance have.
Well, that's the thing. The frontliner is Rel, pretty much it's Prairie. So even if Toasty wants to believe himself to be tanky enough, he's going to die really quickly if he's not careful. And that's exactly what has happened multiple times when they just collapse on Toasty, blow him up as soon as possible, and then he just doesn't provide any value. That was a quick flash.
Yeah, Fear making a big play in mid lane. They've got Perry coming around the back, but they're just losing the fight before he even arrives. Neo takes down Shochi and Manui, and look at Perry. He's just like, guys, when were we going in? I'm back here at the bird camp, and all of my team has just been slaughtered by Mirage Alliance. Mirage, marching their way through mid lane, are gonna crack open the base.
And that's the thing with Shochi. Shochi give it, Shochi take it. He can force the game-winning play and make you win the game, but he also does have these moments when he forces a bit too hard on the plate, and that ends up biting them back. That's what happens here, and now Perry is alone with CC Legendary to try and protect, but I don't think it's going to be enough. Oh.
Yeah, Manui has respawned here, coming on out, has a lot of opportunities for passive procs, but the chain CC is just too much. Tangle Barbs connects. Chad wants to end it right here, right now, and Neo will happily oblige. A triple kill to the Ezreal, and Cincinnati Fear cannot mount the defense, and Mirage Alliance will not go quietly out of the ACL. We're going to a game number 3.
It's going to deliver, Gordo. It's going to go all the way. And this was the expectation with these two teams. We knew what they were capable of doing and how strong they could be. And it's precisely why we're going to a game 3 to decide everything. Who gets out, who's going to be eliminated, and who's going to move forward. But what a game from Mirage Alliance. Great turnaround. Something definitely was said between game 1 and 2 that clicked for them, and importantly, brought back a really good mentality, really good aggressive mentality looking into this game 2 and now moving into game 3 as well.
Yeah, and you know, you're always going to have mentality questions when you're coming off of an FF in game number 1, right? Yeah. I mean, like, that's the question that everybody has in their mind is like, ooh, geez, these guys just got slammed in a team fight and forfeited immediately. How are they feeling for the rest of the series? Clearly completely unfazed, as they are not at a gold deficit for a single moment in the entirety of game number 2. They roar back into this series and are now taking us to a full game 3.
Well, they started the game with a 2-0 on Neo because of the level 1, so they never felt behind in gold, and they never felt that pressured at all because of how strong they were. And it worked out marvelously for them later on the game. That being said, 2 things that you can take away importantly for this game. 1, the Rel clearly doesn't show a lot of prowess for either of the teams. Maybe it's not the champion, but more so the way that it's being utilized. And so far, it's really not finding the value that we're kind of expecting of the champion. And then the second one, the Ashe ban has to come through, because Dardog not only played it really well, but it certainly changed a lot of the bot lane dynamics that we were expecting to see, and it did impact a lot of how Minui and CC Legendary wanted to play.
Yeah, I completely agree. Mirage Alliance were the ones to ban away the Ashe in game number 1. They clearly think this is a first pick worthy champion, and really demonstrating why in this game number 2. Yeah, I agree. They were definitely able to execute a whole lot better. I think the game plan of forcing Cincinnati Fear into a more traditional bot lane was also very effective there. I think you don't want to let Minui play his mages. You don't want to let ZZ Legendary just play the Senna and, you know, ride a farming, pushing lane alongside something like that Seraphine or the Ziggs as well. Mirage, they banned the Ziggs as well as the Senna in this game number 2. And I think that really kind of forces Minui to take something more traditional. And I think that that's really where Neo and Dardoch can build themselves up an advantage. They showed it very well in this game number 2. I think Fear were able to strike back, I think, a little bit more than we expected, right? There was good moments with the Varus where they were able to get low HP bars. They were able to get a kill in the 2 versus 2 as their first kill of the game, but Mirage just completely run over them.
Exactly. I think that the problem there was that it was depending way too much on the Varus damage, that Shochi and Toasty really never had that opportunity to have that much damage. Like,
True.
At the end, Shochi did get executes on a couple of times, but more times than less, the Syndra was not actually getting that outplay button that everyone knows and loves. Like, it was a lot on how they built up on that before that play and how it ended up working out. And it's sad to say that Shochi didn't have those opportunities this game. Same for Toasty. So if they can, into the next game, have more damage onto those 2 carries, and then have Minui also keep on the performance that has had so far, it can still work out really, really well for Fear.
Absolutely, and it is now a tight race for the last slot in the ACL Fall 2023 top 8. Only one of these teams will be advancing. The other one will be dipping out here much, much earlier than they would like to. So do not go anywhere. We're going to be right back after a couple-minute break with the draft for game number 3. We'll be back to find out if Mirage Alliance or Cincinnati Fear are going to have to pack up their bags early.
Fellow armsmen, I ask you, will you follow me tonight to break their spine and reclaim what once was mine? Those cravens backstabbed me, deceived me. Never shall I tolerate their crimes again. Now let the hunt begin. Oh, 7,000 souls scared and daunted. such a tale of woe. Not too long ago, this village was a golden scene of hope. Call down the reckoning to bring back hope and peace. Restore our Gloria to live forever. Bring down the dark regime. I know how to unleash eternal power. Lead us to order. I am the light bringer. Fellow warriors, I ask you, should my campaign come to an end? There's way more to avenge. Oh, 15 million souls living in this realm without much hope. Not too long ago, this kingdom was a golden state of hope. Call down the reckoning to bring back hope and peace. Restore our Gloria to live forever. Bring down the dark regime. I know how to unleash eternal power. Lead us to order.
Welcome back, everybody, to tonight's broadcast of the Aegis Champions League, where Cincinnati Fear and Mirage Alliance are tied up 1-1. One more game will determine who moves on to top 8 and who is going to be dipping out of the Aegis Champions League.
Yeah, one game is the difference between continuing with your aspirations and dreams alive and falling down and not having anything to do for the off-season, for the remaining of the off-season at the very least. So it's a tough situation to
Time to
be
start
in. But
grinding PBE if you lose here. I mean, that's the only option left. So
that, or maybe we have an ACL tournament in the future or something like that. I have absolutely no insider info. This is just like me saying maybe something happens, but I absolutely don't know. At the very least, I know that someone gets eliminated tonight.
yeah, it's all combines and PBE after that. So
Yeah,
I mean,
pretty
at least
much.
we got a few more before anything else can happen. We got to round out the rest of Aegis, and there's a couple of weeks left here. We're still gonna have 8 teams after this. We're a large league. I mean, I still haven't fully wrapped my mind around being a 32 team league this split, but I think it's once we're 3 plus weeks into playoffs, we're like 4 or 5 streams in, and we've still got 8 teams left. I think that's where it really starts to hit you.
That's
like,
a realization.
There's a lot of teams in this league. Especially, and the other way is that Mirage and Fear are playing an elimination match here weeks before we end. That's the other way to know that, wow, there's some competition. There's some stiff competition in this league. These two are prime examples of it. Mirage Alliance still looking to defend their title that they earned in the summer. Now going to have to beat Cincinnati Fear in order to do it. We were saying this exact same thing last week with CCG Futures, and Mirage were able to pull it off. Now going to have to do the same against a separate set of NACL talents. It was against Quacker and Music and Breezy last week. Now it's going to be up against Chochi and Manui and Perry. We'll see if they're going to be able to do it here. We are nearly going to get in. Again, the sides have swapped again, so now first pick is going to be for Cincinnati Fear. We'll see how Mirage are going to adapt to that. I still think you need to get away some of these really safe Meiji focused bottom lanes. I think the Senaban and the Ziggs ban need to be locked in.
Exactly, but that also means now that what we've seen with the Ashe, right? The fact that the Ashe ended up being so strong, and both teams have opted into the very least considering it over in the red side, means that now it's more than likely going to come through as a ban. Or there's the potential that Fear doesn't feel comfortable playing the Ashe and they would be willing to trade it once again. But if that's the case, do they have an answer? That's kind of the real big fear that you have in this situation, and how you need to adapt your pick bans in those cases. But so far feels pretty similar to previous games. nothing out of the ordinary just yet, and it looks like it's going to be either the Ziggs or the Ashe band away here.
Yeah, the Jarvan and the Senna band's going to stay true, and the Ashe going to get added. So the Ziggs is going to be the difference maker here. I mean, they banned Ziggs instead of Senna in this position in game number 1. So that's the question: is Cincinnati Fear going to be willing to treat the Ziggs with that high priority? Hell yeah, they are. They're going to snap that one up right here, right now. That is a flex pick between Shochi and Manui as well, but I think they're going to very much want to give that to Manui. They're going to very much want to just equalize bot lane, call it a stalemate, and focus around the rest of the map, and this is a great way for them to be able to do that.
Yeah, overall, and it's also really good against the Orianna if it's going to be the pick here for MA. So you can really play it off really, really well in the mid lane and in the bot lane as well. It's going to be the Nico instead. So I think for the first time in who knows how long, Orianna is not going to be the focus of anyone. Nobody's going to opt into the champion. They are going to ignore it. And instead, MA going to stay true to one of the combos that worked out really, really well in the previous game. Point and click CC from the buy, followed by the CC from the Nico. Really effective, really consistent, and something that Chad and Satsi played really, really well. On the other side, Syra can. So we know where each of these champions are going, pretty much.
Yeah, they are going to go for the flex to Shochi. They say, hey, you know what? The Ziggs, it's longer range than the Nico. You can just bully this champion all day long. And we've seen Cincinnati Fear do this on stream before, right? They did this when we featured them in the regular season. I think it was into the Orianna. I think you're totally right there, TDS, where they had Shochi take the Ziggs mid up into the Orianna, and they just completely dominated that lane, just shoved it in all day long. Shochi's very, very adept at being able to hit these skill shots and win out on these matchups, and he was able to carry his team through that way. I will see if that's going to be the same deal coming into this really, really crucial game number 3. Instead, now Neo's going to get his hands on that Varus as we get into the second round of bans, and again, Perry going to lose access to that Wukong.
And the Wukong plus the Hammer Band, and I like the Hammer Band here because the Varus having that range advantage couldn't have battering quite a lot from the Sai and the Rakan, so it makes sense that we see it coming. I'm also expecting maybe a Renata Band coming in from Fear just because of the Rakan, but it can be a bit weird how you're trying to phrase this, as we see the Jax from Toasty and now the Rel instead. So it's going to be the good opportunity for MA to look into the Renata or any other of those supports that do have range advantage against the Rakan, or if they want to go for engage against engage, Alistar is still an option that they can also look into, and that Dardoch does like to play, but it's looking like the Renata
is looking like they are going to try out that one for Dardoch. So the Varus Renata duo, something we saw from Fear in game number 2, now going to be piloted by Mirage. Despite its unsuccessful run in that second game, they decide that's the pick they want into the Xayah Rakan. I do think the Renata very good into the Rakan. The fact that they weren't able to pivot into something like Ashe Ezreal makes the Renata a whole bunch more valuable. Now Perry looking at the Lee Sin, might just decide, ooh, he's going to lock that one in. I like this a lot. Excited to see some mechanicals showing off from that super high value jungler. Cincinnati Fear going to look to trust him with their lives. And last pick, something for Toasty. They do not know what the top lane opponent is going to be, and we've talked about this as a rough matchup for the young top laner. He's normally a mid, only playing top here in the ACL. He's going to blind the Renekton up against Alarm, and Alarm's going to hit him with the classic Poppy.
Yeah, not gonna lie, I was expecting maybe Toasty to go for the Renekton instead, because it's for the Ornn instead, because it's a safer option in terms of tanks, going to be a bit more easier to try and pull off fights if they want to look like that. But with the Renekton, you're going to be in a much 50-50 situation. You either win really effectively, and like we were talking about in the first game, force the issue a bit more onto the squishy carries that there are plenty of in the side of MA, or you end up being forced to a really weird spot and you actually don't find the value that you're looking for as a Renekton. So it's going to be a interesting game for Toasty, because Alorium is perfectly comfortable going for the tanks, going for the Poppy in this game. Way too much value when you look at what Fear drafted with the Rakan, with the Lee Sin, with the Renekton. And if he's able to just stop the initial engage from them, then it enables them to force fights much easier on their side.
Absolutely. And remember, everybody, the predictions are live. You can go in and bet your channel points on who you think is going to be able to take this series. You got a few more minutes left to get those predictions in as we complete the in-client draft. I think you're spot on there, TDS. I really like the composition that Mirage have been able to put for themselves here. I think they have a really great disengage tools with the Renata and the Poppy. They're really, really powerful. I think with the Steadfast Presence in particular, up against that Rakan, Lee Sin, Renekton, all of them going to be trying to dive on in, and none of them going to have nearly the success that they would hope to if that Poppy is positioned effectively. And I think it's going to be all about Neo. I expect this is going to be some kind of on-hit DPS-y Varus. I don't think this is a poke Varus angle. I think they're going to rely on him for the bulk of their damage, and they have the setup to be able to keep this immobile Varus safe and get that damage on across.
Weirdly enough, I wouldn't have been against the poke bearers, but I do agree. I think that this is probably going to be the attack speed bearers. Fits really well with the idea of Nico, Bai, and Poppy going in. He still will more than likely be facing champions close to himself, so the fact that he is going to get dived or anything like that probably benefits the attack speed version. He is going to be hitting a lot of the targets. I'm looking at the composition from Fear, and the more I look at it, even though they do have tools to try and reach the back line and explode some champions, it's going to be a lot on Shochi on the 6. He has to hit poke really, really well, because 4 out of these 5 champions are to a certain degree squishy. Bai is a good in between, but the Nico, the Varus, and the Renata are all squishy, which means that as long as the poke from the 6 hits, then their survival is much harder to achieve. And I can see that being one of the factors that Fear play around that can set them for success in team fights. If they don't get that though, I can see MA just running over team fights really well.
Agree, and I think something that this Fear comp is lacking that you often want to see with the Ziggs is like reliable single target lockdown that you could do at a range, right? You have the Rakan for the engage. He's going to be probably your best bet to get folks grouped up for a big Mega Inferno Bomb. Renekton can go for a Flash Ruthless Predator or something like that as well if you really need to, but you really want something like the Maokai, the Rel, the Sejuani to just keep somebody in place, guarantee that you're going to be able to get a fat Mega Inferno Bomb, because that center point of damage on that ultimate, the ratio is just absolutely bananas. You can one-shot so many champions that way. We've seen so many players be able to turn around major fights purely through that Ziggs damage and overcome the lack of a traditional DPS that Ziggs often means. Now, Fear do have a traditional DPS. They've got the Xayah in the bot lane. They're taking the Ziggs towards mid, and they're just going to be trying to bully the Nico out of the early game. We'll see how exactly that plan is going to go, because I think all in all tonight, Sudsy has been performing very, very well up against Shochi. I think they were pretty even in game number 1, even though Cincinnati Fear were running away with it. And in game number 2, Sudsy was getting solo kills up against Shochi. I think he had a very good showing on the Nico in that second game. Now playing that champion again into what should be a rough matchup for it, we'll have to see how they're going to be able to do.
I will say though, game 2, Shochi did die level 1, so that made the matchup a tad bit more difficult for him. But I do agree, Sudsy has been one of the best performers so far for MA. Carried really well in the second game, played really well in the first one, but the first one was a bit more weird for MA compared to Fear. And honestly, having these 2 high-level mid laners performing so well so far is a really exciting thing to look forward to, not only in the ACL, because I do want to keep on seeing them play as much as possible, but also looking into next year in the NACL, potentially looking at these 2 players play is going to be exciting, and I want to see who is able to get the better out of the other before next year. Who's going to be having the head-to-head advantage is what I'm looking forward to tonight.
Yeah, that's going to be the question, right? It's time to put up or shut up. This is what it's all about. TDS, these high impact, big stakes games, and both these teams now find themselves with the backs up against the wall. Mirage has been here before. Fear, this is their first match in the lower bracket. They just got sent here last week after a tough 2-0 up against Peach Cats. Now going to immediately be challenged by Mirage Alliance. It is Peach Cats. You don't blame anybody for losing to Peach Cats. That team is stacked. But now Mirage, crazy how quickly things can change, right? One day you're up in the upper bracket going into the upper quarters. You lose to Peach Cats, and now you are in game number 3 up against Mirage Alliance on the verge of being eliminated. Things can go real fast, even in a double Elim bracket, and Cincinnati Fear are going to have to restabilize themselves if they want to advance. Mirage, hungry to defend their title, showing that they've got the mental resilience to come back from something as rough as that game number 1. Now going to be looking to take it to Fear and complete the reverse sweep.
And looking at how the bracket is setting up, it doesn't get any easier than this, because now you have Fear or Mirage, right? But next, Lotus Exiles. Next, you have potentially the side of Ole Miss that has been a really big wildcard, or TFT. So every opponent keeps on getting stronger and stronger the longer you go in the lower bracket, and it's what makes it exciting, but also what makes it fearful for each of the teams that go down there, because the match that you're playing tonight may be the last match you're playing, and this is what makes it exciting, but also a lot of fear for multiple players. But it's all or nothing right now, and I think both of these teams just want to get in as soon as they can and try to get the victory, obviously. But just based on drafts, I feel like Mirage has a really good chance, and I can see them taking this third game.
I can definitely see it as well. I think both of these teams have shown a lot in games number 1 and 2, but it all comes down to this one. It all comes down to what they've put into draft number 3 to determine who is going to be able to advance in the Aegis Champions League. I hear some spawns coming on in the background, so we're very close to being able to get into the action for game number 3. Really going to be a big shame for whoever ends up dropping out here. Both of these teams so hyped up coming into the split. I think both of them maybe struggling a little bit more than one would have anticipated in the group stage. I think both would have been favorites to win out in their group. Neither did end up quite getting there, but both have really steeled themselves and been competitive coming into this playoffs. Going to have to see which one is going to triumph today.
Yeah, it's a difficult matchup to try and predict just based on the names and based on how we're expecting them. I feel like both of them having similar stories, with them ramping up the longer the season went, instead of then just starting really strong and then continuing to be like that. They took time to ramp up, and that's why we're seeing them in this situation as well. But if they can keep on going, I can see them being title contenders, with how each of the teams has just improved and improved week by week.
Completely agree there, as we are ready to get onto the Rift for game number 3. Spectator delay is over. Cincinnati Fear versus Mirage Alliance for all the marbles and for a spot in top 8 of the Aegis Champions League. Game number 3 starting right now.
And once again, it looked like there's not going to be any surprises. This game, though, I do understand why. It's game 3. It's the last game for. It's potentially the last game from one of these teams, so you don't want to throw it in the level 1. And especially, I think Fear probably has a much higher amount of fear for level 1s based on what happened in the previous game, and they probably don't want to throw it again like that.
Yeah, no, they definitely do not want to give it up to any shenanigans. That would certainly be a big no-no, and especially for Cincinnati Fear, who gave up a lot to level 1 shenanigans last game. They are going to be doing their best to avoid that however they can.
As it looks like Dardoch trying to go in. They know that he's there. They just get a bit of information. They actually don't lay down any sort of big vision down there in the bot side jungle. Just maybe trying to bait or make Perry believe that there's vision so that he paths differently.
Perhaps. Yeah, definitely want to get inside that Lee Sin's head a little bit.
That's good damage.
It is. CZ Legendary found. He has his passive shield popped. Takes a little bit of extra damage on top. A little bit of extra gold in the pockets of Dardoch. He's going to be plenty happy with that one, as the invade has broken out on this top side. Chad gets the smite, flashes away. I mean, you know what? That's no CS in the pockets of Perry, but that's a lot blown by Chad.
He did get the jungle camp, and I think every jungler will agree that's probably a win in your books if you get the jungle camp. It's the same logic around the blabber scuttle crab. If you get it, who cares if you die? You got it. Even though it did cost him quite a lot internationally, but still, he got it.
I mean, fair enough. We'll see if that ends up costing Chad domestically, as he does have to still play out the rest of this game. And now he's in the enemy jungle up against a Lee Sin without flash, trying to steal the red buff. Will that end up paying off here? These junglers really going for some spicy play in this game number 3 to try to eke out an advantage over the other. Let's see if Perry spots his red buff being stolen. Doesn't look like it. Chad's been able to take it. Chad's finding Perry in the jungle, going to be able to snag away the birds again. And Perry really taking a beating from Chad in this early game.
Wait, but they had a ward down there, so they knew Vi was coming off to try and steal the jungle camp. So the flash, at the end of the day, does work out for Chad much better. Also because, and this is something we didn't talk much about with how it started, but because Perry losed out on the jungle camp initially, that means that he's going to be level 1 for the rest of his clear. And it didn't end up mattering that much for how Chad started, but more so for how it followed. But I would have loved to see more so the initial entrance onto jungle, because they should have spotted Chad. Here they get the red buff. Barry's trying to leash towards his red buff as we see a bot lane play.
Yeah, there's the snare coming on through out of Dardoch to re-engage from ZZ Legendary. They want to keep that fight going, but they're at a level disadvantage, and Neo will continue to chunk away at the health bars of Cincinnati Fear. Here's the play again.
Yeah, Chad pretty much just forcing onto it. Perry actually really close with both jungle camps, 3 health, and I feel like Perry misclicked because I think he was looking to try and get the last out attack onto the Raptors so that he gets the advantage there, but he misclicks onto the Vi, ends up losing the camp, and now he's really far behind to the Vi.
Absolutely great early game pathing from Chad, making the most of the situation where he was invaded. And it looks like the two are going to run into each other once again here on the top side jungle. Scryer's Bloom used by Perry, spots that the red buff is still alive. He wants to get out of this first clear with a red buff to his name, and a big trade from Shochi found in the mid lane, going to keep Sudsy very, very low. So the junglers do spot out each other. This brawl may just continue. The red buff taken low. Sonic Wave connects. Sudsy still so low, but doesn't want to recall and leave his jungler out to dry. Perry going to be able to smite away the birds as they're collapsing in with Toasty. Mid laners still continuing to exchange blows. Sonic Wave connects again, and Perry will force Chad out of his jungle and will get himself this red buff.
Yeah, able to force the issue a lot there, and it pretty much comes from the push of the laners. Shochi is even following, trying to look for the Nico on the side. Chad gets flash done, it's gonna die.
What a disaster there from Chad. He just thinks he's invincible after how well this early game has gone. That's the only explanation. He just walks up into 2. He sees that the red buff's there, but he also sees that Toasty's there, and Toasty really punishes him.
And really weird in that situation, right? Because he knows that he has no flash, whereas he knows Toasty has. So there's 100% more opportunity there for you to end up dying. Shochi has no mana.
Yeah, there's going to be the Tangle Barbs connecting. Sudsy sees a chance at another solo kill, and he is going to get it. Sudsy once again taking down Shochi.
Shochi doesn't flash preemptively, and that forces the better out of the trade. Even though Sudsy was getting so heavily pushed, he actually ends up suffering with his life at this play. And now it's Chad against Perry, but there's an advantage of numbers here. Shochi has no teleport.
Yeah, there is an advantage of items, though, for Perry. He's got the Iron Spike Whip done up against just that Kindle gem. Chad definitely missing out on some of those offensive stats. He gets a little bit of cooldown reduction for it, but he's got the winning bot lane, and they're going to try to convert this into a dragon, and it looks like it's going to be relatively uncontested. First dragon going over to Mirage.
It is Cloud Dragon, which is obviously, as everyone knows, the lesser important dragon that you can try and get, but it's still a good advantage for them to try and get with the bot lane push how it was going. They also will now have a bit more priority in terms of dragon stacking because of that first dragon in their favor. And now also the Vi, closer to reaching that level 6, could be a difference maker when looking into the mid lane, since Shochi has no flash.
Absolutely here. Very, very tough position now for Shochi to be in. Flashless, immobile, up against a Sudsy that is built out the lead. He's got the Lost Chapter completed. He's going to be able to challenge for that wave push a lot more effectively if he's able to get his blooming bursts to trigger accurately. Shochi going to be really, really struggling now in this mid lane to try to keep things even.
It's gonna be a tough matchup to try and make things be as close as possible. He does have the range advantage, which makes farming easier than compared to other champions, but it's also a situation where if you're not careful enough, you can just get engaged by one random minion and die immediately. Top lane maybe Fear with the Lee Sin roaming by, but they are not probably comfortable enough to look for it as aggressively as possible.
Yeah, they're just going to channel that recall. It'll be just fine, as Lorem finding a nice little trade for himself as well off the back of that hammer shock. Really knows the ins and outs of these Poppy matchups, and you can see is actually coming out ahead in the trades with Toasty. He's got Chad in the wings, but Chad will get spotted by that control ward in the Tri-Brush, so Toasty is not going to take any chances. He is going to back on away.
He's going to back off. He's not going to try and force it, and just going to be as comfortable as possible. When he gets his flashback, that's when you see Shochi be a bit more aggressive, maybe once again. But at this point, he cannot put himself in a spot where he's going to die. He is quite behind in gold to Sotsi. He knows that he needs to farm up as well to be the sort of champion that Fear need to try and put a difference or make a difference in the game. So he's not really allowing himself to be put in the top spot. Toasty, though, doing a really good job. He's really far ahead from Alarim. He's actually putting pressure onto the Poppy, even though he's not currently super far ahead in gold to the Poppy. He's doing a really good job with it.
Absolutely here. And I think Toasty's been very impressive in this matchup. I've heard a lot of criticism over his performance as a top laner, but doing very well against Alorum in this series all in all has definitely not been the breaking point by any measure of competition. And now duking it out with the Poppy as the counter pick in game number 3, appears to be doing a just fine job as well. But we'll see what value that Poppy brings in the later game compared to the Renekton. We saw Alorum on the Renekton side of this matchup in game number 1 just end up hopelessly outscaled, and Alorum brings so much utility to the table that we could see the same thing happening again.
It's a lot on the value of how these players utilize their champions, right? It doesn't need to be hyper carrying, killing targets, but also how you set up for your team for victory. And in this situation, Alarim, what he's looking for is just allow Neo to auto attack, allow Sotsi to be able to deal as much damage as possible, and then just put yourself in a winning spot. He did that with the Yarn in the previous game, and he's looking to do the same here with the Poppy. And it's not like he's suffering quite heavily. Once again, he's losing out in terms of gold, but he's a tank. He doesn't care that much about gold as long as he's farming to a good enough degree. And he's even putting a lot of pressure now onto Toasty.
Absolutely here. Meanwhile, Chad back in the invades, taking away the wolves here. Will get spotted by Shochi, so might have to contest for these a little bit. Also just saw on the minimap he used the Vault Breaker, so can't look for the fight either. Will be forced to back on off. But still, gets himself the dogs, gets himself a little clear out on the vision, and we'll just return to his half of the jungle.
A really quiet early game overall in general after how it started, right? Because with the early level 1, with the way that both junglers blew their flashes, with how the first blood happened as well as the ensuing deaths, and then also how Shochi died, I was expecting a bit more action with the amount of flashes that were down, but it's just looking like they are trying to go tit for tat in a lot of these situations and then force a fight around a big objective.
You know, Perry coming on up in the jungle, not going to be able to find the red buff this time as Chad has secured it for himself. Still trying to contest these Raptor camps. He's contested every Raptor camp this game, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
As right back to level 1 and to mixed success, we'll say. It does mean that the jungler's still remaining relatively even. Something else to call out is that Chad has not bought in a long time. He's still just sitting on that Kindle gem. I expect a recall to be coming out here soon. Yeah, there it is. And there's going to be the full purchase.
Yeah, 2 newer items to try and play with just before the dragon spawning. They don't have a good position for this coming dragon if they want to fight it, but it doesn't look like it's going to be the case. Like, they are waiting a tad bit before they actually commit for it, and now they are trying to position a bit more. Oh,
wow, all right, this is very late. Dardoch throwing down the hostile takeover well short of any members of Cincinnati Fear, and Fear will back away, content with the dragon, and the ocean rift will come upon us.
Yeah, that was hopeful, honestly. Really hopeful, but maybe he saw something that we didn't see, especially with the camera, how it was looking at top lane. Probably he saw something that we were inspecting it all. As we see just the dragon collected, lanes getting pushed once again, and not a lot of action.
Yeah, I suspect a big enhanced dash from the Rakan back to Xayah. That's my guess. ZZ Legendary was there, and he battle danced like 2 screens away, and suddenly Dardoch ends up looking a little bit foolish on stream. That's a guess, though. Have to watch the replay to find out. Is going to be a big trade in the bottom lane. Chains of Corruption comes on out, connects onto Manui, and he's going to take a fat chunk, throws on out the Featherstorm to disengage the play. Going to lose out on the trade anyways. Chad coming in for Shochi, going to be able to land the first punch. Here comes the full combo. Every ultimate blown onto Shochi as he is taken out. Chad comes away with the kill.
There's way too much CC between these two champions that it feels like Chochi is not respecting enough. He just gets completely burst out in that particular play. As we see why Dardo goes for it. Maybe he was expecting the range to be slightly longer, but like there's no, it doesn't feel like there's enough justification. There was way too much range there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's rough.
Yeah,
It's a rough position. It doesn't end up working out, but you know what? In the long run, Sudsy comes away with a kill in the mid lane. Mirage Alliance still have themselves a nice little lead. They're not going to think too much about it. So Alorum continues to find very nice trades into Toasty. You just see, I mean, this is a guy who's got a million Poppy games, right? He just comes away with great trades, uses the Steadfast Presence at just the right moment, finds his way to use the Buckler to get additional procs off the Grasp of the Undying, and he's just coming away in very good trades up against this Renekton as the flash is blown out of Neo. Parry coming in for the play in the bottom lane. Neo so far out of position, going to try to get away thanks to the hostile takeover, but the full combo going to land for Parry, and bailout cannot save him. Manui finishes off the kill as Chad is waiting in the wings in case the dive goes any further. It will not at this time, but meanwhile, it's like Sudsy going to take a fair bit of damage. The trade to the top side. Alorum finds a solo kill.
it's enough with the flash, has enough damage as well, and we saw him winning multiple trades, but now it materializes into a kill. They find the winning play, and now Parry actually getting collapsed on.
Ooh, taking a ton of damage there. Is going to have to flash on out to safety. Flash in from Sudsy. Connects finally as Chad is able to pick up the kill. But now Sudsy going to have to back out away. The full engage coming on through from the bot lane. Manui going to be able to melt down that kill as Dardoch has to head for the hills. But Chad is not done fighting yet. He knows that Neo is on the way. Dives on through with the cease and desist. It finishes off Manui. Alorum coming in off the TP. Going to look to lock down the remaining targets as Dardoch picks up the kill onto Shochi.
They just have more numbers, they have more players ready to fight, and even though it's a fight that maybe Fear could actually try and look into taking, at the end it turns into complete disaster with multiple members dying and first turret blood going into the favor of Mirage Alliance. They are finding the plays and they are showing why they are so hyped and looking forward to the NACL next year as Parry gets engaged on once again.
Wow, what a great angle from Alorum as Parry's got nowhere to go. Parry goes down. Toasty trying to get revenge, will be able to pick up that shutdown, but he's locked down as Neo can keep on raining through the arrows. 2 kills to Mirage for 1 for Cincinnati Fear. Shochi gonna try to equalize, but Poppy is very tanky and has the Steadfast Presence passive. She'll walk right out of there.
He's trying to find a lot of damage, but at that point it's really difficult. You have to hit multiple of your poke to even be close to that being favorable, and it doesn't really matter. And Parry gets clipped. He doesn't do anything in that fight, and even though Toasty gets 1 back, it's not a big victory. So far this game, Mirage has been playing the situations much better, and now looking forward to the next Dragon in 40 seconds, they are trying to set themselves up for success.
And all the plate gold picked up in mid, you can see up at the top there, it's contributing substantially to the lead that Mirage Alliance have built up for themselves. They've been able to win out through these lane matchups. Sudsy coming up huge on the Nico in the one-on-one versus Shochi for the 2nd game in a row. It ends up paying out with 4 turret plates. Big advantage here for Mirage as they are 4K gold in the lead coming into the spawn of Dragon number 3.
And this dragon is going to be quite important. It doesn't set up for the soul point, but it just makes you be in quite a strong position, because not only are you going to put yourself closer to that soul, importantly, it's how you end up that fight. If you win it by a huge margin, does that mean that you come back into the game immediately with your fear? Or as a mate, do you put yourself in an even bigger angle? And it actually looks like they are not even thinking about fighting it. They're just letting it go. They are giving up the dragon and looking to try and maybe fight for a future dragon in a much better position.
Yeah, Soul is a very long ways away. Alorum should be able to pick up this turret gold to at least trade for something cross map. I think this is very smart for Mirage to give on up. They know that they can take their fights later on. They know that they are in an overall advantageous position. So with Alorum stranded up on the top lane, no access to teleport, they are just going to let that one through.
Well, and the thing with the dragon is what we were talking about. It's the fact that if you force a fight, if you lose it, what does it mean if you lose that fight? And I think that Mirage analyzed that situation and smartly said, okay, we don't need the dragon. We don't need to force a fight for the dragon nor the dragon because we're not in a bad spot. We are ahead. We have good enough damage in our carries, and we can take much better map control if we don't fight for that dragon in this particular situation. And that is exactly why they opt out of it. They get the top lane turret and instead smartly move into having much more control of the game. This is something that doesn't happen often because I feel like teams tend to get baited by dragon, by the idea of dragon, much more so than by the value of it. And this time around, Mirage analyzed it accordingly and didn't fumble the bag.
Correct. This now coming on forward. ZZ Legendary throws down a ward, checks the bush, finds Chad waiting around, and now finds Chad again. Chad is continuing to camp on out, look for somebody unaware, and look for the full combo to try to blow them up. Alorum still brawling with Alex to the bottom side, as this is going to be where they choose to use their Rift Herald, trying to take an inner turret. It will get a fat chunk down as the rest of Mirage are looking to collapse. Toasty already at about half HP. They're going to get the stun into the wall. Here's the full combo of burst as Neo nearly takes him down, but Alorum taking a lot of damage in return. Here's the hostile takeover. It's going to go across the carries. They are going to have to dive backwards as Perry is going to have to retreat and forced out from their bot outer turret, or bot inner turret rather. Mirage Alliance are going to secure it.
They at the very least get the turret and nobody dies, which is a really nice positive sign for Fear, but they still were in a really close spot there. And we're seeing that Toasty is not finding the sort of value that he was looking for. Once again, making Renekton not feel as good as you would like in a champion. Like, he's not really finding the value you're looking for, and who knows when he's going to find that value, or if he finds that value.
That is the question, TDS. How are they going to be able to make the most out of their composition? 5K in the lead. Mirage have so many opportunities to play this game the way they want to. Here, yes, they got the 2 dragons, but that's still a long way off of Soul, and they have yet to take down a structure. Those objective bounties would certainly help them out if they were able to claim them, but Mirage have done such a good job of allocating players to every lane to be able to stop any attempted pushes while still making plays of their own, right? They got all 3 outers. They got an inner in the bot lane. They're building up their gold lead further and further. And so far, Fear just haven't been able to stage a response.
They haven't been able to find a really good response, and I think a lot of that is on the back of MA not allowing them. Like, they are playing with the right mindset of not giving enough opportunities. They are not overly committing for plays that they don't need to, and they are playing around the right timings. They are waiting for the champions that are strong to be close by to make a play happen, because they understand that they don't need to make a play happen unless it's pretty clear that it can work out.
And
they don't
Alorum
need
and
to
Chad.
overforce.
Look at Alorum and Chad. They're just constantly on the flanks too. They are constantly threatening, but they're also so disciplined in when they actually pull the trigger. They have not gone in for fights that are going to be losing. They have not actually advanced further than they need to without the necessary vision, and so they're not giving angles for Fear to find their way back into the game.
And it's important to keep on looking at how MA is going to keep this up, right? If they can keep on finding the sort of timings where they are not allowing for Fear to look into anything, then Fear is not going to find the angle back into the game. Once again, a lot of this game to me was Shochi with the poke trying to make the low health bar targets be as low as possible. The squish your targets just not being a factor in fights. But poke hasn't really been big in some of these fights. He really hasn't been able to find the most useful poke in a lot of these situations. And then the rest of the members cannot fight accordingly because they are not in the best of spots. As Perry gets spotted here, maybe he's forced on, but it feels like it's not worth it.
Oh. Ooh, they're going to land the Chains of Corruption onto Shochi. That is a priority target who's forced to flash away. Cease and assist comes on through from Chad. He gets tailed out. Pop Blossom finds 2 and snares up Manui as well. Manui's the next one going on under the Featherstorm, trying to flash back away. He's going to be able to take down Neo, but Alorum has found his way on top of him, forcing the remaining members back as they are fully reliant on Shochi and Sudsy for the damage. Manui going to be able to take one back down as Toasty has found his way into the back line, chunking his way through Alorum, but finally interrupted and taken down. Alorum on a killing spree, but Manui and ZZ Legendary, the lovers duo, staying together through the fight. They take back 3.
The Rakan and the Saya coming in clutch for this fight. Crucially, Minui gets his mythic for this particular fight and actually is able to make the most out of it. They cannot force onto the Nico in this position though, because they know that she can just completely kill them. But with Shochi alive, Perry alive, and Chad away for 3 seconds, they can probably try and rush this dragon as quick as possible. And this will be soul point.
Clutch play by Minui in that last fight. Flash with the blade caller to take down Neo and remove the primary DPS threat. Now they're going to be able to get themselves at a soul point, like you said, TDS, and Fear have a fighting chance in this game.
Yeah, importantly, they don't have the speed to look for Baron on the side of MA, so it's going to be a dragon uncontested, and it's going to be a quick move by Fear onto the dragon as well. There is Pop Blossom now, so they have to be careful about Sotzi's positioning, but the Baron is getting low quickly.
Yeah, focusing it down. Mirage Alliance wants to secure this for themselves. Mega Inferno Bomb going to land on a Dardoch. Toasty Alex is in the back line. They're going to pour everything into him to slow down his advance. Neo stands and fights. Is able to take down Toasty and the dive into the back line on towards Dardoch. But they are able to melt on through. Manui has stood and fought, and he gets a double kill with the back of the Blade Caller. He still has access to the Feather Storm. Chad and Sudsy are both down. They looked for the Pop Blossom and could not find it. Now 3-on-3. Starting up the dragon once again, knowing that they're the only ones with a jungler. Fear can force this. Nora dives on in, but here's the quickness out of ZZ Legendary. Parry over the wall, looking for the kick onto Neo. Held down by the handshake as it's a 1-for-1 with Dardoch falling. Manui, the next target, has Alorum all over him, chasing him down with the hammer shock and picking up the shutdown for Neo.
This puppy is a monster and is making the lives of Fear unbearable in those fights. He's just finding so many angles to push targets into bad spots and make the team fights be so much easier for MA. A fight that is essentially super long because it's from the blue side jungle into the dragon, into the Baron. It lasted way too long and now it's looking like a potential Baron for MA with the smite up for Chad, with Neo alive as well. As we see the Baron in live, we see the replay as well, and the idea is not necessarily bad. It's the Renekton looking for the kill, but this is the issue. Renekton at this point, it's not going to one-shot the enemy AD carry, and it's exactly what ends up happening as live. It's looking like maybe
they're challenging. The teleport's been set. They're coming on in to try to steal away this Baron. It's about to be fast. Chad goes down. Toasty looking for the steal. Can't find it. As Alorum will secure the buff and dive further. He wants more out of this fight. As Shochi is going to be forced back into his jungle. Neo with the bailout ticking away is nearly chunked out of the fight and will have to retreat. Mirage Alliance on a knife's edge secure the Baron buff.
Now, Caddy, ignore all the other replays. How did Alorum get the Baron? I need to know that because there was no smite. There was no damage on the puppy. How low was it for them to
get the Baron? Cinder, I will eat my hat, TDS, but we'll check it out when we get a second here because we might not be done yet. Still looking for picks. It looks like Mirage cannot put it together.
Yeah, I think they are going to disengage now. They are going to try and force the push here, but there's no Varus. So they are now finally going to maybe have a slight breathing opportunity for us. That being said, it's the Baron buff for Mirage. And once again, Alorum is just a monster. Minui can deal damage, but he has way too much armor, so he's not doing enough damage to Alorum.
A Poppy God among men, a 4-level advantage over Perry on the Lee Sin. He will be happy to step on up and wave clear in front of that man. As there's going to be the snare connected by Sudsy from the jungle, gets a good chunk onto Perry. And every little inch of health matters at this point in the game. They're going to be happy to keep that Lee Sin low as Manui is on wave clear duty, just barely dodging out of the tangle barbs.
Yeah, they are looking to try and maximize the value of the Baron buff. Something that really good teams always do is try and play off of the 2 lanes, off of the push. I would love to have someone pushing a tiny bit the bot lane, but they are trying to break the tier 2s first and then move inside of the base. And that can end up mattering for when that bot lane push comes in, then they can set up for the in-your turrets as well inside of the base. Now, the push is not moving that fast, but they are finding enough timings to just force it in their favor.
Calm, controlled, and collected for Mirage Alliance as they continue on their siege. Comboing onto Perry. Alorum on mid lane duty is just so tanky. Has the Steadfast Presence passive. Will shake off anything that Cincinnati Fear throw at him. and they decide, hey, we got a fair bit of damage. We got the mid lane inner turret. We're going to recall and set up for this dragon. They do not want to give over soul to Cincinnati Fear. That is their best shot.
One of the good things, and also another part of the good things that Fear does have in their favor, is the fact that they have a 6. Okay, here's the Baron buff. We need to see this. They are doing it. They take a lot of damage from the 6, but it's not enough to actually die. Chat dies here by the bouncing buffs, and this is something we were talking about squishy champions. It's a buy. It's not super tanky, so the damage from Chochi was mattering. And now here, 1,800, the Q from the Renekton. Let's see.
Oh, we got another fight breaking out. ZZ Legendary's been caught. He's been taken down. Alorum diving further on to parry. Manui up way too far. Flashes back away but gets caught by the hostile takeover. It's a double kill to Alorum on the Poppy. Mirage Alliance stop any effort at taking this dragon away from them. Toasty will get an outer turret, but Mirage win across the map.
We got absurdly baited by the Baron buff play, and we still don't know how it happened. But what we know is that Mirage wins another fight. Yeah, we'll
get into this again.
Yeah, we'll have to wait eventually. But what we know is that Mirage wins another fight. They play once again really effectively and find Minui, and now maybe Toasty?
Toasty getting pulled back in by the handshake. Perry going to be leading the charge back on in. They want to try to blow up Chad, but Alorum going to keep pulling them on out. It's a full 4-on-4, but Neo and Sudsy arrive to the play, and they're bringing the damage with them. Toasty going to be taken incredibly low. Finally gunned down by Neo, who's ready to reset across the rest of the fight. Diving even further is Chad with Alorum at his backside, and Neo looking for more targets to hit. Finally, we'll be able to push the remaining members back as they take down the mid lane inhibitor and move on down towards bot.
Not gonna lie, I'm a tad bit glad that Alorum is sending Renekton back to Extinction, because the Renekton champ shouldn't be picked again. It's not working out like this team's intent, and so far it's been the other top laner that has had a much better impact on it. Oh,
everybody in on Manui. He doesn't have access to the Feather Storm. They are going to take him down, and the flash stun comes through from Alorum. Mirage have found the picks. They have found the fights, and they will not say die. The reigning champions with a second comeback in a row lock themselves in a top 8.
They keep themselves alive. The reigning champions stay reigning for another week at the pyramids. So going to be interesting how MA is going to look forward, but they have something post game 1. Like, they could have the worst game 1s ever, but game 2 and game 3 are a complete different beast for them. As we get the Baron that we were asking for, how it happened, how Alorum got it, because this is game winning. If Fear gets this, they can try and not only get a huge amount of gold that is standing in the map, but also turn around the game. So it's 621 the hit from the Barris.
Hammer Shock.
It's 52 with the Poppy. I cannot believe that.
Yeah, it's just Poppy Q. Hammer Shock comes on through. I was thinking for a second it was Bammy's Cinder, and woo, that would have been nuts. It's the Hammer Shock.
I will say respect to Alorum in that situation, because I feel like more times than less they queued the Renekton. But he read that the Baron was going to be defined by very little things, and he just queued the Baron instead. And that ends up, I will say, ends up winning the game for the team. Because if they, once again, if Fear gets that Baron, there's every turret still standing for Fear to take. That is so much gold that turns around the game immediately. And we were seeing Minui fighting back effectively before that Baron, but he was lacking a bit of gold to actually kill Alorum. That was the difference there. And could have been the deciding factor for Fear, but it's actually the deciding factor for MA.
It really is there. And, you know, props to Shochi as well, though, on that Baron play. Great call to blow up Chad. And the fact that he is able to do that makes that play a million times riskier than Mirage were comfortable with.
Exactly.
Does end up succeeding for them anyway. And yeah, I mean, Alorum, what a monstrous performance on the Poppy here. Talked about it when he locked it in R5. It's a great angle for the Poppy, and it's a great pick for the player. He is just so well adept at playing this champion. He's got so many games on it, and he comes up huge when it matters most for the team.
It's really important and good to see the players that maybe we don't have a lot of, not expectations, but a lot of shining lights or a lot of attention put on, being able to still pull off performances from positions that we don't expect him. Because Poppy is not a carry champion at all. Poppy is not a champion that you pick for your hyper carry, for your star player, the one that will put you into the grand finals. But it's a champion that you know that if you put on the right player, he can deliver on the right occasion. And I think that Alorium did that just right tonight. And it's a huge props to how he's playing. I will say I don't think he hands Steph Toasty that much. He did. Don't get me wrong. I think he did, but he didn't to that degree that he was probably saying. But it didn't matter. He just needed to be better, and he was.
All right, let's not get too ahead of Alorium here, because we're going to bring him on for an interview in just a minute. We're bringing him on for the second week in a row. Who cares? We can't get enough of Alorium here. So we're going to throw it to a quick break while we bring him on in, but we'll be right back to talk to Mirage Alliance Alorium. Welcome back, everybody, to the Aegis Champions League, where for the second week in a row, we are joined by Alorium. Alorium, we keep on meeting like this, my friend. Thank you so much for coming back on.
Back again and ready to follow up on everything that was said last week.
Good. We were telling you before we came in, we quoted you a lot on the hand stiff quote. Do you think you lived up to your expectations in the one-on-one up against Toasty Alex in this series?
Man, what do you think? I told you I'm going to give Toasty Alex the hands. I delivered on my promise. I'm giving Toasty Alex the hands. It's not his fault. You know, he's not a top laner, but it is what it is. Like, I will give him the hands, and I always follow through on that promise.
Yeah, we did say it's not support. Yep. You can't just swap to it from any position and immediately be number one. But the game number one, I think, is where some folks might say it was pretty close. You know, you ended up winning the lane. You were able to get really ahead on the Renekton, but Toasty ended up having a big Jax game later on. Had some really huge plays for that Jax to be able to come back and be able to win that game for the squad. And any thoughts on what exactly went wrong there? Because that game did end up with like a 25-minute FF. It ended up really blowing up in the side of Cincinnati here.
So what happened is we were pretty happy with our first three picks, and then we get down to 4-5. And one, we knew that they liked Senna, but we were saying, okay, we can leave Senna open game one, but okay, in the future we're not leaving Senna open versus any Senna gamers. But anyway, so we get down to 4-5, and I made the crucial mistake of asking an 80 carry player what to do in draft. Huge mistake. I asked Neo what he wants to pick into like what he sees on the screen, and you never ever ask an 80 carry player what he thinks, because he'll tell you the wrong thing every time. And so he picked Aphelios, can't play the entire game, deals like 7,000 damage, 6,000. And we even knew too, like immediately after doing that, it's like, why didn't we pick Varus? You know, someone who could actually play against those champions. And then so bot lane, just not that much happened bot, but for them, it's a free kill on the Aphelios. For us, wow, Senna's hitting us from 700 range, and all the Seraphine has to do is press W on Jax Wukong, and they're really happy. So I'm not listening to my AD carry anymore on draft. That's the solution.
Is that also the tip you're going to have for future when you're coaching? Do not listen to the AD carry guys.
I will on my life die on the hill that 95% of the time the AD carry should just never talk in draft and just let everyone else do it. On my life.
I feel like that's I'm all in behind that. As someone that's seen multiple times AD carries not follow up, I feel like that's a valid enough comment. That being said, I want to ask on not the first game, but what happened between game 1 and game 2? Because it feels like you guys, first game it's practice, and then second and third game is the real deal. Like the jump between game 1 and game 2 last week and this week as well is kind of big, and I'm kind of curious if it's team talk, coach talk, or just you guys kind of entering the zone after the second game or something like that, really.
I think it's because we come into these games like, and a lot of like no one's here until like right when the game starts, and so we do our first draft. It always sucks because we mess something up, or like I said, I asked Neo for his opinion, and then like after that, and game 2, Chad actually said like, hey guys, what if we just like picked a bunch of champions that press R in the game instead of have to like get real late game and have to scale through the early game. So we're like, oh, that sounds cool. So Vi Nico, great. Oh yeah, we won. Makes our draft a little bit. And Cincinnati helps too.
Yeah.
Cincinnati helps too. Definitely seemed that way, as yeah, you guys were able to do a lot better once that champion was removed from the pool. So Lotus Exiles going to be your guys' opponent next week, as you were the last game to round on out this lower bracket. So your next match will be up against that Lotus squad. That's Lawrence, Shore Race, Dark Wings, City Witty, Rovex. Any thoughts on that squad or your opponent in Lawrence and who you're going to be facing off against next week?
I'm pretty sure we beat them also 2-1 in the regular season.
I believe you did.
Yep.
So I'm not too scared of them. Like, they do have some good players, and I know City is always a wild card on what he's doing. He's got some funny stuff going on. I imagine that we're still going to win, but you know, I don't want to hate on them. Like, they're good players. I like a lot of them. They're not bad.
Also, no, I'm kind of curious with one particular thing from your team, and it's that obviously we have a lot of talent this time around compared to when you guys won the ACL last play to this one. But it feels like the level did go up a bit with the amount of players and teams that came through. And I'm kind of curious where, obviously, I don't expect you to say that you're lower than anyone else, but do you put yourself in the same level as the favorites in the tournament, right? Like, even if you're in the lower bracket, do you have that same level of expectation? Like TFT or Pitch Cats that feel like the current favorites to everyone?
I think if we're not griefing our game 1 and we do everything properly, yes, but most of our losses have been to us just like doing something real dumb. Like when we lost 0-2 first out of the winner side, it's just I think I talked about it before. We showed up, and I talked about it last week. We showed up and just didn't do anything and just expected ourselves to win. So as long as we're actually focused up and, God forbid, show up like 30 minutes early to a match and talk about draft before it happens, I think our first game draft might actually go well instead of the Mirage Alliance lose game 1 fast.
Sounds good. Makes sense. Makes sense. As we are going to be taking on a look here. If you want to tune into the Discord stream, we do want to take a look at that Baron fight at the very end of the game there.
Yeah,
where you end up having to secure it as Chad gets blown up. A little curious, what's the thought process going into the play here, and how are you able to execute when everything starts to break down?
Well, my team is actually screaming at me to ult Renekton way sooner, but then Rakan ends up blocking it. I think if I ult Renekton a little sooner. Actually, you know what? Never mind. That doesn't change anything. Ziggs kills Vi. I need to tell them that. They're sitting here telling me like why I'm not ulting sooner, but Ziggs kills this guy. We're panicking a little right there. We're like, everybody just, you know, goes, oh man, as soon as he dies. And by the grace of the Lord above watching us play League of Legends, gave us that Baron. So we were wiping the sweat off our brow with our handkerchiefs. Just... It was a stressful time, but as soon as we got it, all right, we won.
All right, well, scary Baron, honestly.
Yeah, no, I mean, back-to-back weeks, you guys clearly have some kind of higher power up on your side. Excited to see.
You know, You know, I've realized that we're actually in the with them being on lower bracket, we could have them week by week. Like each week, we could have Valorim come back here if he just keeps winning.
We are
actually.
at this point. It's a joke. Yeah, we'll keep bringing you back,
Yeah,
Alarm,
keep
as long as
bringing
you
me
guys.
back. I'll update you on everything going on, Mirage.
As long as you keep winning on stream, we will we'll keep bringing you back. So do have to close out for the night though. I want to give the last word to you, Alorum. Anything you want to shout out? Anything you want to say to those still tuned in?
Shout out Chad picking champs that just press R and telling that to the entire team. So we all just pick champs that press R button, and that helps us win a lot easier. Shout out that, so, since we don't really practice that much, it's good to just play something simple, and we dropped the egos and did what we were supposed to do. And shout out to the whole team. Every time we lose game 1 and get a little tilted, we just bring it back.
Sounds good. I'd love to hear it, Alorum. Thank you again for joining us. Back-to-back weeks. Maybe we see you next week. We'll see what the featured matchup ends up being, but I love seeing you guys throughout this run so far. We'll see how far you guys can take it. That's going to do it for the Aegis Champions League tonight, though. Thank you all for tuning in, and thank you from myself, TDS, Caddy on production, Coachify, and everybody here at Aegis. We will be back not on Monday, as that is going to still be Thanksgiving break. We'll be back next Friday, a week from today, with our next round of matchups. But until then, take it easy. We'll see you next time.